Right, Chris, whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to this lovely event. Just a couple of announcements before we begin. The first thing is just the fire exits. So your fire exits are down this way here, okay? And you have another one over there to the right. As for the toilets, we do have toilets. You go out that door and you can go straight down, and it's the first two on the left. In regards as well, there's other toilets as well in the Hawkswells. There's beverages down the back. You can help yourself, okay? Now, first of all, good evening, everyone.
Oh,
Well,
I the step to the left more.
oh,
Find your light.
find my light.
You are the light.
I am the light. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you as well. We have a live audience today as well, as we're streaming globally. And we also have an audience. Is everyone okay if I turn the camera to you guys?
Yes, no problem.
So as you can see, guys, we have a lovely audience here, select audience of people, which is great. So this is an event to basically promote Traveller Pride. And the event for this one is looking back, moving forward, being an individual while celebrating our collective history. It's a good title, isn't it?
It is, it's a strange one.
So the theme does fit today beautifully. We're here at the Hawkswell Theatre in Sligo, where we're able to celebrate Traveller Pride, identity, culture, and in memory of creativity and voice. Today is about looking about what we carry moving forward with confidence, and also speaking honestly about the issues travellers face in the present. We want to thank, first of all, Martin Ward, our coordinator for this year's event. We also want to thank the value partners of Mary Caffrey and the Museum of Childhood Ireland, and the Hawkswell Theatre, and our production team working behind the scenes. Throughout the event, we will be joined by travellers, friends of the travellers, with artists, writers, cultures, educators, historians, advocates, and community voices. We hope today feels open, welcoming, and connected. We want the audience to feel part of the conversation too. So feel free to lend your voice. We'll have a part where these will be asked for comments. If you feel comfortable to bring some, by all means do so. And as well, for the global audience watching us, feel free as well to comment and we will get to you as well. Okay, so this is a celebration, but it's also a conversation. It is about pride, culture, memory, truth, creativity, and the future we want to build together. Without further ado, I give you your host this evening, Mr. Bernard Sweeney. Woo!
Thank you, everyone, and especially thanks to Michael and the production team who've done a wonderful job. And it's our first event. So as I mentioned before in the earlier video, sometimes a whole lot of things can go wrong, especially the first time. And in my case, the second time, and the third time, and the fourth time to happen. But yeah, I also am the founder of Travision Foundation, and about 4 years ago, we put the foundation together to look at the deeper, not just the issues, but look at the pride, the history. And of course, I met my friend Dylan Foley, who I'm going to invite up in a moment. And basically, for the last 4 years, we've been promoting our foundation. But saying that, we had an Outside Economy podcast, and that podcast has been running 10 years this year. And initially, it was because, like a lot of us, we weren't presented with the facts. We weren't presented with our history. We're told we lived on the fringes. We had no written history. There were distinctives and distinct that, and then we're an ethnic group. And all that's perfectly fine by the time it was in it. But it didn't add up because, as I said to the sociologist one day, that how about we just stop asking us who we are, and we ask the settled people who they are? Where did they get their systems from, their institutions from? And of course, the next 10 years, we took what Travers had already been saying, and we matched it up every discipline we could find. Geneticists told us a story that confirmed the story of Travers. The microbiologist told us a story that confirmed what Travers had been saying. The archaeologist, the historian, every one of them confirmed what Travers had been saying. And sometimes I get myself into trouble because I say what we were saying makes common sense. Because if it didn't, we would be talking out of hats. But it didn't make common sense in Trinity College. It didn't make sense in the political institutions. It didn't make sense even in the travel organization. Not their fault. They're what they call a paradigm, a way of thinking, a pattern of thoughts. And we were, ever since, have been trying to correct that. But I think in the last 12 months, 18 months, big changes have happened on that front. The geneticists now are confirming and even changing a narrative that they themselves misinterpret. So there's a lot of positive stuff happening. And I'm convinced, thanks to Eileen Flynn, Senator Eileen Flynn, who brought forward a bill. And the bill was to give collaborative history and culture recognized. As Brief Smith from Newport Broughton once pointed out, the fact that we even have to have a bill and get it passed in the door will tell you there's something not quite right. But nevertheless, that's still in the pipeline. It's going to happen. And one day, many, many young travelers are going to find out exactly who they are, how they got there, and ways to move forward. I don't need to point out to anyone here that's working with travelers, we're in what I call a psychological collapse. In other words, we have some of the worst psychological outcomes of any community in Europe, and I would imagine most parts of the world. How does that happen? How does a proud, prideful community end up in such a situation? And again, it's not about pointing the finger or blaming people, but we're just going to correct that narrative. So one of the first people I want to introduce is Dylan Foley. And Dylan, as I mentioned, been working side by side for the last 10 years. I've been annoying him, wrecking his head about travel, culture, identity, and so on and so forth. They got sick of me and they found out prove it. I don't confirm what he said. So we did. So Dylan Foley. Dylan, how are you? Good. Obviously, me and you have many, many conversations because we've been doing this for a number of years. And every so often when we meet people from different disciplines, they're a bit kind of taken back. They're looking at Dylan like, what the hell are you doing here? You're not meant to be here. Because we're always surrounded with primarily sociologists, which is perfectly fine. They're not used to archaeologists and other disciplines, so it's kind of a strange reaction to him. But I would say that we've had a very adventurous Indiana Jones style quest. And you played a huge part in that because obviously you came from a third level education. You're familiar with the institutions where I was not. A bit deeper, and would like to tell people just a bit about yourself and how you got here. Not necessarily here tonight, but the journey.
I walked down from the house.
Well done. Dylan, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. I came from that. I studied archaeology back in 2000. Let me think. Back in 9, I would have studied half archaeology, half computers. I worked on the road lines as we or the big NRA digs, that kind of thing. But I always had an interest in history, like many of the people here in the audience. You can't sometimes you're curious what's around you.
Yeah.
And I have a bit of that in my family as well. I'm sure, look, the history's all around us here, So, yeah, I'd have been interested in studying, when you look back into the past in Ireland, but there's a bit of a wall there, isn't there? Sometimes there's like, what's beyond the 17th century? What was Ireland really like when, before the invasion?
But even said that you studied history, studied under, for a period of time, Nicholas Canny, which is a world-renowned historian, University of Galway. You live in the same town. Like, it's the strangest thing it is that we live in the same town, but we didn't know each other. Did you know who Travers were at that time? Or what was your understanding who Travers were? And did you find Travers in all the history books in your college?
Yeah, that's a good question. Not initially. I would have the same, more or less the same idea as anyone else, really. The sense of like, Travers are always here or around us in Sligo, as you know. But from the settled point of view, if you want to put it that way. But my own grandmother would have hinted in various directions. Travers used to call to her house, and she would. Travers woman used to share clothes. She used to share clothes with her and stuff. My grandmother had many children, 9, something like that. But there was a thing we used to be sort of sent out the back while she was talking to her or whatever. But there was connections there, but we didn't really understand what they were.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have understood fully the picture. It's a little bit different when I went into college. It's not like college gave me all the answers either, because we went into college, we studied what we would understand as the Celtic world, or Gaelic Ireland was a big thing on our curriculum. But we studied it as if it was a place that was gone, long gone, and hence archaeology is involved.
Yeah.
In other words, when things are, archaeology is the study of like from traces in the ground or remnants of stories. So when the story is no longer known, you try to piece it together from evidence. But and so what I'm saying by that is that the Gaelic word, it was given to us as if this history of the old Ireland was gone, and therefore only archaeologists could be involved in trying to reconstruct it.
Yes.
If you know what I mean. But actually, as I look at it, as I was more and more familiar with the records, I think you were saying to me, you were reading it yourself recently, the roles, what do you call them things, the various first order documents, English documents and various source documents. That's what I'm trying to say.
Calendar state documents.
Yeah. The more you read of the old text, the more you'd see that there was actually simple things, like all the names overlap. Like if people are called O'Connor, or Connors, or people are called Sweeney. And why am I reading constantly about these names in the old documents?
So we said that it sounds real obvious. Some people watching this, they'll say, who didn't know that? Everyone knows that. But once you say it and it makes sense, then it makes sense. We had a podcast with political scientist, Aldous Reid Jr. And he comes back to Ireland every so often. And he was telling us that the learned people, which means the educated people, like the universities, were trying to convince them that Travers are related to Roma. And I won't use the language you use, but he told them, capital F, who believes that? This is an African-American man, professor of political science in America, and the Irish people in, I assume, the universities were trying to convince him we're related to Roma. And if you think about that, we got the same skin complexion, we live in the same locality, we got the same surnames, and yet we're some strange community way out there. And how does that happen? I mean, why would something like that happen?
Yeah, do you remember one of the first trips we did as part of your podcast many years, nearly 10 years ago now, was go to an Irish castle.
That's right, yeah.
In North Sligo.
What he means by an Irish castle, when I got there, there's just 2 rocks in the field. There's no castle at all. I'm very disappointed. They told me that is a castle.
The remnants.
That's it, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And that was one of the funniest things, was the hidden castle. And so we made a point out of going to places where there'd be like one rock.
That's right.
You obviously have to use your imagination to see. But like a lot of the time, these castles, this is one of the few surviving ones. There was a little bit more than just a rock in this, there's a bunch of trees and a gateway. But the point there was that most of the Irish castles had been erased, had literally been leveled and
Demolished, gone almost.
demolished, wiped out. Yeah. And then again, the same claim would be done, no matter what names or surnames travelers might have, and no matter how many times those surnames would appear in the ancient books. Somehow we were taught, even in college, that somehow there's no, we're not taught overtly. It's just disconnected.
Yeah.
And then as you say, archaeology and history was on purpose disconnected from having any engagement with a traveler. And of course, I think probably just partly me being from where I'm from and other things. Over time, I would have also encountered, fights. How would you put it? Conflict going on between even local people, say in Roscommon over it. They all knew. Remember, they knew about where the King of Connacht's castle was.
In Roscommon, for the locals, they're some kind of get it recognised. So they're trying to get this area recognised as an old Gaelic castle. So Dublin guy comes down, and because Dublin has their own particular school of thought, it was conquered by the England, ran by English systems, English school of thought. That doesn't mean the people there are English, but they were looking the world through that lens. So they come down to Roscommon, they go and fight with the locals. They'll say, no, it's not a, Dublin will say, no, it's not a castle. And the locals say, of course it's a castle. It's obvious it's a castle. And this kind of highlights that you could be looking at the same thing, but two different cultural mentalities. The West looked at it one way, the East seen it kind of different. Isn't it?
Yeah, so they would learn in college, they would learn that a castle, they would learn it from the Norman or English point of view. And a castle has a certain function. It has to be a big thing on a hill that's defensive.
Yeah.
And all this sort of thing. Whereas this was the opposite. This was a small, actually two mounds with a spring coming out of one of them. And it was in a place that was completely, you couldn't defend it. There was a beautiful river, a small river, but a very nice one running through it, and nice green grass fields and swards of grass and all this kind of thing. And in the annals, in the old records, the kings of Connacht had granted corn to these guys to create loads of beer, basically, right? So the point I would say is that it was a castle, but the Gaelic idea of a castle was completely different to this Norman castle.
Different cultural way of building something or looking at something.
So the King of Connacht had to dispense endless hospitality. That was part of the law in the old Irish, the old Gaelic law. If you were the King of Connacht, you had to give endless hospitality to people. So they would have a place where you could, essentially like a big hotel or place that people could gather. They would gather herds of cattle and horses, sometimes up to 10,000 head of cattle in these kind of places. So it had to be a place that everyone could go to, a big crossroads. And the thing would be though that this fella, professor, had studied castles in his world, but he'd studied them only from the English point of view. And therefore, when he saw this place, he goes, "There's no way they can defend this. This is crazy. This is no way this is a castle."
Yeah.
And of course, the irony was that people had always known it was a castle, and that all the legends and whatever. Right? But it shows you that two mentalities can just go straight past each other.
So it's very similar to travelers who always didn't note down the very fact and stuff like that. That's fair enough, I would. But they knew they weren't from the settling community. They knew they weren't dropouts. They knew they weren't failed Irish. But yet, it's been like those who come from that particular school of thought, Trinity College and other places, are like, oh yeah, whatever. But you're this kind of group, and we have to assimilate you back in. Which brings me to the point, I suppose the question is, because we got this a lot of time, we said, that's nice. It's nice to know about the history, but that's way back then. We're here now, we've got to move to the future. Which is a bit like the theme of this thing, looking back and moving forward. Why would any of this be relevant to the present day? And that's the big question. Why would we be talking about this stuff? And of course, when you look at from the 1960s, it was the report of the Commission on Itinerants. So the state decided they were going to force this group of people into the central population, and there was going to be no final solution. So in other words, they didn't care about your history or anything else. And from that time, they marked down that travelers were as educated and as intelligent than the settled people. The children were as educated and as adept and smart as settled children. That travelers had no discernible inferior complex. In other words, travelers back then were far more confident. And we had actually found that we had better mental health than the settled population. So in 60 or 70 years, how do we go from that to where we're at now at the present moment? So this is why we say history is very, very important, because it informs us of the present. It tells us about the systems. Like you're involved with the travel organization work, they say the key issues affecting travellers. What are they? Education, accommodation, legal representation, in other words, overrepresented in the prison. It's and various other institutions. And we were always brought up there and grown up and sold to everybody else to see them institutions as Irish. And of course, we're not saying they're not, but actually, fact, they're not. They're not Irish. They come from Westminster, and they're part of the old colonial systems that once targeted our ancestors. And this is how we know it's been one generation after another. So that's why I think I'd be dragging Bill around the place. It's because not we want to romanticize this and tell a wonderful story about kings and queens that have gone by. We're trying to point out to the settled population primarily that they've got the wrong idea of travellers and probably of themselves if they believe all them systems are Irish. That be fair.
I think that would be true.
Yeah. And I've seen Ron half joking that we used to go to various places and they'd be looking at Dylan and got two heads on, because they're not used to other disciplines on board up to this point. And that's why we call it a multidisciplinary approach.
Okay, well, what's interesting is when I remember I was at some things and they would say, well, why would archaeology be involved at all in an issue with or history? Why would it be important or involved when it comes to what they would call, they're trying to deal with issues to do with travelers, as you said.
Yeah.
But they had disconnected the history themselves. Like, as we would say, well, if it's a problem that's going on that people don't understand how to solve, that's the way to stay friended. I mean, if you know what I mean, like saying they have a problem or whatever. Well, how come they can't solve it? Or why do they not understand it? You know what I mean? Like, what's actually happening? You know what I mean? And it's like anything, as you said about you went to a bank, you'd be asked for your financial history. If you went to a car has its own history.
Yeah.
If you want to fix an engine, you have to understand how it was built. And so that's where archaeology would come in the sense that initially we would have been told, as you say, by the sociology and that well, travelers are nomads and therefore they don't have a written history, therefore we don't worry about it. But of course, for archaeology, having no written history doesn't matter to us. We go, okay, well, you still have a history.
Yeah.
So we would start to investigate and then piece together the bits and pieces, everything from names to cultural habits to how people live, involvement with horses, metalwork.
And that's the extraordinary thing about all of this. It is the case where one day you and I decided to book this story, a brilliant story, and now we're going to push it out there. We literally took everything what travellers have been saying, and then so if it's true, then it should correlate with the other disciplines. If the science says something and the travellers had already said it for the science, and yet they match up, we tick that box. If the historian said something that happened around that time and travellers said something happened that time, and we tick the box. And I think where we're really trying to go with this is not to take away anyone's identity, because it's a very triggering thing around identity. We'd say that we're an indigenous culture. Indigenous only means a culture that was here before the English arrived. So we would say we're an indigenous culture, and some settled people get triggered. We'd say, well, are you saying I'm not indigenous? Are you saying you're the real Irish and we're not the real Irish? And this kind of over and back and stuff. And we're trying to point out that we're not having issues with the settled people. Our issues are with the machines, the systems. Is that fair enough?
Very true. Yeah. The system was built the system here originally would have been built to benefit certain people. In the case of Ireland, it would have been built because of conquest, as we know.
Yeah.
So that's just a fact. Nobody's disputing that kind of thing. And we bring it up for a positive reason. Like I just said, if you understand how something was built, then you can understand how to fix it or change it a little bit. You can't just start pulling bits out of an engine and hope that it will fix it. But if you understand how it was built, then you can change little bits on it and get it to work better or more in your interest. So if we compare the system to a machine, that machine was built under the British Empire, and the whole point of that machine was to make people live in a certain way. And the way that was the only acceptable way to live was going to be exactly what benefited what the English thought was normal from their point of view.
A really good example of that was in 2022. McDonough family for minutes. They took a case against Clare County Council, and they were living in a mobile home. And so, from Dublin's perspective and their legal system, they were looking at home as a house. There could be no other kind of home, not a wagon, not a tent, not a mobile home, just a house. And that's exactly how the English used to see homes in Ireland. It could be a wicker home, it could be any other movable home, it had to be a house. So Jared Hogan, who studied history, had a good familiarity with the history. So he said the word home can't be just, now I'm paraphrasing, in other words, it's not exact words, but this is what we're reading from it. He was practically telling Dublin, you cannot look at home from that perspective, but that's pretty much an English perspective. Home is much broader than that. That was the first time in a very long time a Supreme Court judge ruling went in favor of travelers to say a home can be a mobile home, it can be a wagon. And that was a very indigenous kind of way of living. So, yeah, and I think our journey continues because, again, it comes down to identity. If travelers are a bit confused about who they are, and most travelers will be telling the story to get it, it makes sense. But it's, like I said to you, it's not sense in where it should be. It's not sense in the education system, the political system, or any other institution. And unless we change that, I think we're going to see a deterioration and more rise to, unfortunately, suicides in the community. So we say this about travel pride, but there is pride in taking knowledge and understanding. Because I think once you know what is bothering you, a bit like closure, people who miss a loved one or didn't find out what happened, they can be tortured forevermore trying to find out. For the first time in a very long time, we have all the disciplines that nobody's remotely come near to so far. And yet we have long hair waiting to go into action. And hopefully one day that will change. So, yeah, any questions for Dylan? If you have, you can fire away. It's a rare opportunity. But in general, I think, yeah, I think we're moving in the right direction and we keep doing what we're doing, I guess. And once again, to the settled population of the world, we did not call you settled people. We did not put the term settled people on you. That was through colonialism. It was through Dublin, protect the settled people, as I said, in the 1960s. And this benefits travelers, it benefits everyone. If you look at the statistics of travel, you map them on every indigenous people around the world. They're almost identical. Why is that? Of course, when the English came here, they went from here to America, Jamaica, to the Caribbean, to Australia, and many other places. And that's why we see similar outcomes. So I believe our story has never been told. And it's the first time in a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, because I would say that one of the great ironies is that the further we looked into it, I said initially that it was archaeology, but actually when you start to sew the story up, you'll start to realize that, in fact, we do have records. And that now that we understand that science, now that we have science to back it up, as in science just tells us certain things about, well, travelers are from an Irish background, same as same roots as the general population. And the microbiome tells us that they have to be pre the invasion, a lifestyle that's older than that invasion. And then I would say that the greatest irony is that the very people that would have said had the least, that didn't have a history because they were supposed to be nomadic according to the system. Very many of the families are actually the ones we have the longest records for.
Yeah,
And
amazing.
this is one of the great ironies of the whole thing. Everyone,
I was half joking from before I had this very similar conversation. I said, you tell me then, where is the history of the settled people? Show me one paper, one book written about the settled people and their history, the term settled. And he couldn't. And then I said, I'm tired of we've been asked all the questions. Let's ask the settled people where they came from, where they got their systems from. And then we turned it all around and makes more sense. Because a lot of us have the same surnames. And as I mentioned earlier on, same skin complexion, same locality. The native Irish got assimilated. In the same way, we've seen travelers go into systems and a generation or two afterwards, they either disown where they came from or they don't recognize it. No fault of their own, because their children growing up in that system. So, and again, it's not about tearing down systems or breaking them down. It's about giving people credit where it's due. Our ancestors, our people, did not retain that culture, that identity for no reason. They're very proud of it. I think there's no greater travel pride than to recognize where you came from, your roots, and one day build a better Ireland, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Dylan Foley, thank you very much.
thank you.
And I will call Dylan again.
Since the government has so much like land that they own, why wouldn't they like technically make certain spots and fields where people can actually go and live their life the way they want? Like if they set up massive acres of land in certain different parts of Ireland, people would be able to enjoy their lives and travel again and not feel stuck in one place. What do you think the government is like technically building up more buildings and stories for people to live, but not actually caring about the original people who technically found it. Because I think most settled people, we adapted our culture and what we do from what we see. It's very much, they latch on, even the English, they got it from someone else. They're not their own people. Like the Irish and the traveling people, the only people that you can look at them and go, you genuinely know where you came from, you love where you came from, and you keep it within. I couldn't tell you where half of my family come from. Like I couldn't. None of them care anymore. But she could tell you all her family, where they've come from, where they lived. I think it's amazing. But why do you think the government is trying to refuse certain things that technically the traveling community needs compared to what they're implementing and just building more houses?
There are two reasons. One, there's a film called The Man in the Iron Mask, and this brother had a castle, and he had a twin brother. So what he did, he got the twin brother, put an iron mask on him and threw him in the dungeon, and he claimed his identity as the king. Dublin, in a way, tells everybody around the world how Irish they are, and you celebrate your Irish identity. But what's in contrast to their identity with traveller identity? So if we were a different identity and culture, something not quite right there. Why the two different cultures on the island? So of course then we had to be the so-called failed version of them. We were the dropouts and we could be assimilated. In terms of giving ground, they have done this in the past. It's called them halting sites. But they're very concrete concentration camp style suffering holdings for suffering. And the idea was, and this is on record, and they said, break them down, keep them moving, and eventually they'll be damn glad to take the house. Now, when the microbiome specialist comes along, Fergus Shanahan, and says that Travers retained this microbiome. A microbiome means various different millions of creepy crawly things all around us, particularly our gut, fungi, disease, bacteria. But they can be very healthy for you. And Travers are protected in by several inflammatory diseases, Crohn's disease and other diseases, where the settled people are prone to them. And the only way they're going to retain that, we think, was because of their nomadic lifestyle, because they keep horses, because they've got big families. So now microbiome can be passed on to settled people who don't have it. But the idea, I think, is you catch it before the age of 5 years old. So it would be a huge benefit to the settled people
100%.
to give travellers culturally appropriate accommodation and holdings for their horses. It would be saving them billions down the road for millions of people. So, but yeah, they do them, but they used to do it in the past with the intention of breaking people. But now they've got 21st century science to confirm that if you assimilate travellers and you force them into houses, their biology, their microbiome is going to fade away, it's going to die, and it could be prone to other diseases and so on and so forth.
So I'd say that's another reason why we look at history, or why we would try to change the story. We want the story to be more accurate, because if people believe the wrong story, then they won't do the right thing, if you know what I mean. They have the wrong story, for example, of the origins. If they think that Bernard just said, if it's assumed by the government and agencies that travellers are just failed versions of settled people, then obviously the solution is to make them into successful versions of settled people, right? And so that's their only plan for the last 50 years, if you know what I mean. So if we change that narrative, if we change the history and the story, then possibilities like what you've just said, those questions automatically come up, because they go, wait a second, if that was taken away, and as you say, the only way to keep the people's health and to maintain these ancient ways of life is to actually maintain these old ways of life, and the connection with horses and everything that goes back maybe thousands of years, then it all becomes justified. But you need the correct narrative first, and you need to understand the history. And it's not even so much the travellers need to understand it; it's that the state needs to understand it. Because then they can't argue. You know, they have to, then even to them it occurs. Wait a second. The right thing here to do is not what we're doing, and is to, maybe we need to talk about exactly what was allowing a wider, like you said about houses, a wider definition of what's a way of life.
I think for the first time, Kieran O'Loon, hopefully we'll have one on. He was the professional historian of Ireland. And he said it was a very historical moment, the time we talked to the Senate in the Oireachtas Committee in Dublin. It was the first time they were hearing the microbiome, the first time they're hearing about the history, ongoing colonialism. So I thought when they hear that, they're going to close the doors and we're never going to hear from them again. Or if we do, this guy will be thrown in jail for mixing with the travellers, encouraging them. But instead, they give us a very positive response and encourage departments to follow up to find out what we need. Now, how that pans out, or is just nice words are spoken, I don't know. But we'll have to wait and see, because I think Dublin and everybody else also benefits from this story. And then on a global scale, like racism in America and around the world, all of it comes back to Ireland. The very same machines that did this to our ancestors are the very same machines that caused all the issues around the world. If you go back to the origin story, corrected here, it could have a positive impact around the world. We would hope so anyway. Any other questions for them?
If you were to try and explain in like the easiest way in layman terms, where and how we would be able to actually go back and find all of our genes, all of the traveller people's genes and all of that goes back years and years and years, how would we be able to actually get that all in like one, like a census almost, like to be able to actually go back and be able to tell me, because I come from 3 travelling families. So I'm Barry, I'm Morehouse, and I'm Connors. And I know my Morehouse, I know the backgrounds from my grandmother. I don't know much about the Barry side, and I don't know much about the Connors side, because there isn't much that I can actually go and read. My history isn't written down, so I can't actually learn about myself. How would we be able to bring that to a point where we have got the history written down and I am able to go and properly learn about myself? In like, how would we, as like a society, be able to bring that forward so that in maybe 10 years' time, my nieces and nephews might actually genuinely be able to know where they come from?
Yeah.
Because I'm still searching for answers, and I don't count myself as like overly educated. I never got a chance to finish education, but I will count myself as intelligent, and I've done as much research as I possibly can going back. And all I can find from my Connor side is that we dropped the O and we went our own way.
Yeah.
Because the English, it would have been harder then for the English to be able to understand who we are, what we are, because we dropped the O. Every Irish surname almost had an O at the beginning. So if we go back there, that's how I ended up with my name. Like, that's how we ended up with our name. We dropped the O.
I would say that the most important part is in the present. It's the fact we've arrived. We survived all of that. Our people went through hundreds of years of being targeted by the systems, vacancy laws, vagabond laws, transportation, martial law, lots of laws to break down the old Gaelic world. We're a direct line into that world and out of it again. So we survived. We're here right now. So it starts from the present. We've often said to us, oh, I would love to know more. Is there a book we can go to? Is there somewhere we can read more? And there's only bits and pieces in the books, but it's been general. Our story hasn't been really told yet. That's why I think people find me and Dylan's version of events very strange. They're thinking, well, one, where are you getting this from? And two, where's the book? Where's the materials? Where can we read more? And myself and Dylan is working on a book. We're halfway through it. And it is about that, being all the different disciplines, historians, archaeologists, microbiologists, geneticists, all these big fancy names into one kind of understanding how we got here. But the word always called travel. I remember being in school, it's called thinker and itinerant. So which one am I? And the further you go back, them labels disappear, and it's in the Gaelic clans. So it's almost a direct line. And on the other side of that, we have a direct continuation of laws that comes from England targeting the Gaelic culture. From going back to 500-600 years, there's laws there to break down the Gaelic culture, the whole way through, right up to the present day. So why would Ireland still be using old English laws to target travellers if they're the Irish people? Like, if they're Irish people, proud Irish, why are they still using English systems to attack travellers?
Mm-hmm.
And that'll tell us that something not quite right, the mentalities.
First thing is what you say, which is that first thing is culture is, genetics and culture are 2 different things. So you could be proper. It's not about like some kind of pure Gaelic word or anything like that. But even in that world, people would have been very. It was already a mixed society. It would have been, French, Normans, and Gaelic, old Gaelic families, and even English mixed in there. So if you find people's culture is not defined by too much by genetics, but it does tell us kind of like what the origin is going past. There's studies in the last while, and there's studies ongoing about these things to get the population of Ireland's history, to find it all out for everyone. And part of the traveller's history can't tell you the details of an individual family, if you know what I mean, unless in some cases there might be books that trace some of the families, some of the more.
I think that's a really important part when we use DNA. We don't use it to prove an identity, because you could be a baby and grow up in a different culture, any culture, talk any language. Which culture are you in? Even go back hundreds of years, some of the old English married into the Gaelic lands. So their children grew up in that Gaelic culture. They might have an English surname, but they got a Gaelic culture. So DNA never proves culture or identity. It just can't tell you that. But I can tell you how far you went back, maybe, and who else you might be related to. And it's really good for disease prevention going into the future. Microbiome is much the same thing. They can tell you can have that microbiome if you've already retained a particular kind of culture. But I would never use science to prove our identity. But yeah, but we never had to. I mean, we already did. The science only confirmed what Travis had been saying anyways.
What I will say is that if we switch if people turn the history this way a bit, and the same thing starts to happen with the history. The last several centuries of Irish history, they haven't actually been looking to connect, to follow Traveller's family history all the way back. Me and Bernard just haven't had time to even study all that. There's just too much stuff. So we look at the bigger picture, which is in archaeology. Sort of, are these, where did this culture come from? Where does this one? There's the conquest in the 1600s, and then there's now. But actually, it opens up all of that history from the last centuries. If people can trace back through their own families, and then suddenly it becomes very, very important. All the history that people have kept, no matter how slight, like some people have kept, they have their own stories of who their grandparents are and who their great grandparents are. That might only get as far as that, people's memory, but actually there'll be other records out there, and people haven't done the story, haven't done the history, because trying to connect Traveller's history to the general history in the country kind of just hasn't been done, because of exactly what we talked about earlier, where it's been regarded as being either there's no point in looking for it, or it's just been cut, and they try to push people towards, well, you're just different, like Roma or something, so don't worry about it. But actually, it opens that whole question up, that what you're just talking about.
And just finally on that, again, I've said this a few times in the past, but if you say something, sometimes people say to you, what are you really saying? What are you trying to say? So we would say that we're not related to Roma. That is just genetically, factually true. But yet every policy, every report, every program is framed Traveller Roma. Not against the Roma. They have a wonderful culture, a wonderful history. If you got their own origin story, every Roma person I ever met says the same thing. We're not Irish travellers. Irish travellers are a different group, different origins, vice versa. But yet we're locked in together. And we don't go around writing reports called the Irish and the English are the same, or Protestants and Catholics are the same. But it's perfectly fine to say the Traveller Roma are okay. Again, this wouldn't bother us if everyone knew exactly who we were and how we got there. It's almost like the state are trying to frame us as this ethnic group that might have come to the island at some point, because everybody else is the real Irish, the true Irish, and there's no need to question us. And of course, our story turns that all the way around by asking them, well, if you are the true Irish, why are you using English systems? Stuff like that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael, who have we up? Yes.
We're online, guys, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, okay. While we were actually, a person on TikTok asks about the question relating to your one about looking back at the records. They said the death records, church records. Would you have any commentary on that while we're getting the person in?
Yeah, I think there's Dylan might be more exactly. I'll just know a bit more about that. It's like baptism, service, and I think religious order kept more of that kind of stuff than anybody else. But what it tells you, I'm not quite sure. But I think there's a lot of legends in the Gaelic world to go on anyway. Like there's the Book of Sweeney, the McDonald's had their book, Connors, like they're the chieftains of Connacht and the leaders and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of stories like that, and there's a lot of old history. But we're meant to feel that that's different Connors and different Sweeneys and different McDonald's, and we're out here somewhere. No, we're the ones that come from the direct line of them people, that culture, particularly that culture. So I think it's about ourselves putting it all together and then bringing it and presenting it to the institutions that teach young children. So yeah, and I think that credit gives to Eileen Flynn, Senator Eileen Flynn, that they're trying to bring that bill forward, Traveller History and Culture Bill. I'm not sure what the delay in is because it's there since 2018, which was what, 6 years? 8 years actually. So yeah, I think that the fact we need a bill to pass in the first place is a bit strange, but I think we'll keep doing what we're doing, non-funded of course. But if the travel organization got a glimpse at this, they would see.
Hello Bernard, I'm fine, thanks. How are you doing? Aye, yeah, just busy doing the thing, taking the out story into prisons and universities and to anybody that's happy to listen to me and get re-educated in the journey of the traveling people. So yeah, it's exactly, I'm doing exactly where my heart wants me to be doing, so that's good. Well, my own name is Riley, so the Irish is in me. My real name is Jessie Riley. I'm a Mrs. Smith, but my Riley's in there, and my mother was a power. So raised on the old Irish stories and that, and always kind of felt I was more Irish than what I was Scottish. But you are where you are, you know. It's your I think it's your identity. You like to have voices around you that are singing the same song as yourself and telling the same story. So it's quite good. Well, I started writing about my culture as a 5-year-old. I wasn't writing when I was 5, but when I was 5, my father came on a campsite where we were staying. My mommy just had baby number 8, all girls, 4 born before the war, 4 born after the war. And my father drove a bus, a Bedford bus, on the campsite. My mommy told him to take it back where he got it because the war was over and the travelling folk were getting offered education for the children. They were getting, get into houses and things. That the thing about travellers getting into houses, it wasn't so much that they had a roof over their head, it was they had an address. And if you've got an address, then the authorities know where you are, and they don't have to come searching for you. But my mother, she wanted that. She wanted her family into houses and getting them educated and going out on the summer, take to the road in the summer, the berry picking, stone the fields, work for the farmers, do that in the summer, but have a settled place in the winter time. But my father had went through 6 years of the most horrendous war. He'd shrapnel wounds and all sorts of things. And he sure as hell did not want to go into a house where he had 4 walls closing them in. He wanted the campfire. He wanted to be outside where he could put the kettle on the flame when he was eating a cup of tea, and to stand with his back to the flame when he was cold. He wanted a day-to-day existence, my father. And it was robbed from him, because the authorities were saying, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, and you've got to have that address. So he put that bus in front of my mother and he says, Jeannie, here's our home for the next, I don't know. How long is it going to last, these wheels on this bus? And he called it his mansion of the road. And my mother, well, travelling woman, she had to go the way of the yoke. And we went into this bus and we were on the road for 10 years in that bus. So by the time we left that bus, I was 15. And I was always aware of the difference between the breath I breathed and the breath that the country handle or the settled people, the Scaldies, what they breathed. We thought differently. We saw, we love nature with a vengeance for anyone that upset it and everything. I had a totally different way of living my life. And when I got married and I had my family, I felt I wanted to tell my story. There was too much attacking of the culture. When I was at school, you had to go to the back of the queue, or you had to go home with a kicked shin, or your hair pulled, or something like that. So it was always at the back of my mind to put pen to paper and write my story. School for me was a nightmare. It was a prison, one that I had to serve my time, because when the yellow came on the broom, we were off. We were following the crows, and we had all the old campsites, and they were ancient, standing stones, Pictish barrows had always been there. It was almost like the travellers were there before the colonisers, and it was our land. And in the summertime, we could own it, but not in the wintertime. We had to find a place to sell. So when I began to write, I joined a writers group and was telling my story, all sorts of things. And my mammy, God rest her soul, when I told her I was writing, she says, well, look, don't write anything serious. Don't tell people, the all the horrible stories about us, about the bairns getting taken away and put in homes and sent to Canada and Australia, and your father, going to jail for reset, 6 months for reset, and coming back half the man that you went into jail as. Don't tell them that. Make them laugh, make them smile. And I said, but I want to tell the truth, Mommy. She says, you make them laugh, because they are not getting the better of us, because when they've taken the humour out of your soul, she says, they've got you. So keep on laughing, keep on telling the funny stories. Remember the time you discovered that boys and girls weren't the same. Remember, because you haven't got brothers or sisters. And what did you do? You thought your cousin had put a slow worm in his pocket and it was his head sticking out. And did you not put your heel in his groin and try and pull it out? Look at that. Make people laugh. So that's exactly what I did. She didn't live to see the book being published, but she guided me through a lot of the funny side of life. So Jessie's Journey came out, and it was almost like Bernard. It was like it was meant to be written. I honestly, I don't say that in any way, saying that I'm a great writer. I don't, because I write as I talk. I'm not educated in any other way. So when Jessie's Journey was picked up and published, and it went right up to #1 in the Scottish biographies, it was my journey to be a writer and a teller of our stories. I'm not a storyteller. You're a storyteller. We're all storytellers. You tell the story if it's something about your life that you know, and it's entertaining if people can understand you, and you can entertain them in your story. But I just told the story about my life, and then I wrote Tales for the Tent and Tears for the Tinker, and I used the word tinker with the greatest respect, but there's many a empty belly would have been around if the man couldn't put his tools to making a bit of work in the metal. And that goes away back before tin, and before guns, when it was the swords and the targes and the massive amount of weaponry that the clan system needed to survive. We did that, and then when they brought the gun in, we lost. The tinker lost, as we are. The metal man lost his way of making a living, so he did the next best thing. He still worked the metal, but he made colanders and fixed pots and pans and did all sorts of things like that, and wee cups. But he was very much a very important person to the clan chiefs at one time, very, very much needed. So I just kept writing, and I kept writing, and although my father wrote a book, sent it to the Edinburgh University, and he never heard back. I made a promise to him when he was leaving us in this world that I would write his book, but I had no intentions of keeping that promise. But when you make promises, you've got to be very careful that the road in front of you is laid by others and not by yourself. So one day I wrote a book. I sent a copy to you, actually, Bernard, Way of the Wanderers, which was more factual about things that travellers had suffered in Scotland. And the night that it was published, the night that book was published, I got a phone call to say that my father's manuscript had been found in the library of Hamish Henderson at the School of Scottish Studies in Edinburgh University. And I have it back now. And I've recently written another book I think I sent you a copy too, where I've got 3 of my father's stories in it. And so keep on writing, keep on telling your story, keep on educating an ignorant world, because they need to be educated. They need to know who we are. They need to know that the travelling people stand equal to any other man and woman in this earth. We've just got a different story. I think change is the word, Bernard. You know, whether it's for the better or not, it's too early to say. But we're living in a technological world now. Social media kind of guiding our young minds, you know, along a same path. They're all swimming in the same river. I don't know if we're all going to drown in that river. But the changes since I was a girl have come about since, you know, since the industrialization. There was jobs everywhere. Travellers, they couldn't go and hawk, and they couldn't do their usual stuff that their parents had done. Then there was always jobs out there. You know, there was the mines, there was the jute mills, there was factories, there was garages. There was always a job for any lad that wanted to work. But that's all changed because the government decided that travellers shouldn't cold call, and they had to have certificates to do this and that, and so it made it really difficult for them. And so a lot of travellers are just in between that finding their path. You know, do they want to be trained as a mechanic or a plumber or an electrician, or do they want to search for the old cultural roots and see if they can make money that way? It's very difficult, and I would be lying if I could present you with an answer to that. I can only say that the culture, it needs to be, the knowledge of the culture needs to be coming out of universities, and I mean, as I said, equally told from ourselves, because we have a story to tell. And I think a country that doesn't know its own story, it doesn't know where it's going. You know, and there's travellers, you said it earlier, they're all over the world. You know, the Rohingya, there's travellers in the Bedouin tribes, and they're all over the world. And they need to be respected. They need to be, there's enough space for us all. They have to be allowed to live within the norms of society. The state has to stop inventing barriers against the culture and start opening up gates and letting them in, because we're lovely people. We are very gifted people, and there is no reason why they can't trust us and try to respect us and live alongside us. That's what our young need. Whether or not we get that or not, I don't know. Yeah, they have integrated to a great degree, and maybe to a small degree assimilated. I believe that behind closed doors, the travellers still there. They all cant language. They'll, you know, they gammon, they talk it, they argue in it with each other. You know, they wear 2 coats now. A lot of them, not all of them, but travellers do, and I suppose they have to. You know, let's be sensible. You know, they're not going to get a job, and they're not going to get, their kids are going to get bullied at school. You know, we can all be heroes and saints for a little while, but sooner or later we've got to, you know, I don't know, walk the walk. But it's okay for me because I'm getting on in years. You know, I've lived the life, and I've never hid it. I love it, And I love the stories and I respect everything about it, even the arguments. You know, we had a lot of family and they were always arguing. They wouldn't meet and go on the same campsite together because before the end of the day, there were fisticuffs and that. I loved that, honestly. They were individuals, it was their story. But the state, the authoritarian has to stop, like I said, and look at themselves. You said it yourself. Who are they? What's their culture? You know, did they build these castles that they walk among and claim to? Or was it someone else that built them? Or maybe it was the original builder coming from the culture of the nomadic people. We were not nomadic. We were always here. They need to take a stop and take a step back and say, like, right, let's take another look at these indigenous cultures and see if we can find a way of shaking hands, you know, and sharing a few cups of tea and say, oh, I never knew that. Tell me about that. And I'll tell you about my story for what it's worth. I still think the clan system in Scotland came from, I really do, from the Irish and the Scots. But there was so much, you know, like the travelling lifestyle that were in the clan system. They had their bagpipers as well, and their bards told the stories, told it in verse. My great granny was Annie O'Connor, and according to my father, she spoke in verse. You know, she was poetic, and that was her way. And also I've got Galbraiths, Mackays, McManuses, a heck of a lot of Irish in us, and their story needs to be told. Daniel Mackay, Richard Mackay from Armagh was my great granddad, and he gathered up some pennies when he sold his ballad sheets, a penny a sheet. He had to take his name off them. And when he got enough pennies, he took the families across to the mainland. But the travellers were not allowed on ferries. They had to get cattle boats. So they come across in cattle boats. And before 2 or 3 years was up, you know, they were working and they were hawking and they were making a living, and they were living in houses and going hawking in the summer. Pavies, they were called. So, you know, we adjust very quickly.
I think that's the important thing, is that we're not trying to retain every aspect of cultures. We're trying to retain the parts like traditions. If there are family traditions, you'd like to keep them. So you definitely, but you would like to retain some of them, but there's some aspects of all cultures you'd want to leave behind you. Like some back in the day in the 60s, it wasn't very good to women, wasn't very good to children. So there's certain aspects of culture you want to leave behind, and there's some parts you want to carry forward. You've been to Ireland recently, I believe, in Galway. And do you do many trips back to Ireland?
Absolutely love it. And my heart just beats in my chest when I get an invitation. I see the email and it's got Galway or Dublin or something. Oh, this is brilliant. Absolutely love it. I've been to Ireland many, many, many times in my career as an author, and I just feel like I'm right there at home, back home. Although I'm a Scot, you know, I must defend my Scottishness, my birth roots, but really, really love it when they consider me a guest, you know, because the travellers, you won yourself, Bernard. You wouldn't invite just anybody in to talk to you. So I feel like I'm important when I get my invites from the Irish travellers. Yeah, the Galway, that event really touches on a lot of very, very important issues. I think it's well worth its weight in gold, that festival. I hope they continue to get funding and continue to you know, bring in nomads from other parts of the world, because it's wonderful, I think.
Absolutely. I think connecting with the rest of the world, our story would be nomads or indigenous ancient cultures is very valuable. It's valuable to the world. And do we have that? Do we have Samantha on with us? Do we lose Samantha? Michael?
Yeah, we'll get her in now.
Oh, sorry, I thought we were going to choose. I was wondering where poor Samantha went. Just before we have to go, I want to thank you very, very much for coming on. And we're going to, I think we'll get back in a minute, maybe. But maybe, does anyone ask any questions of Jess? Oh, we have a question here for you, Jess, from the audience, if that's okay.
Want me to stand in front of it or just go here?
If you want to, if you don't mind.
Sorry, what was that?
How are you, Jess?
We have a question.
Yeah.
I remember seeing you at Mishlore, and I just thought you were so incredible at the time, and you had so many things that you wanted to do from Mishlore, like you were talking about all the opportunities that you wanted. I was just wanting to know, what have you done since Mishlore? Because you make these massive wide steps that are incredible for different communities. So I was just wondering what you've done since.
Well, I wrote another book, got another book out, and I'm still visiting the prisons. I absolutely love visiting prisons. And because this is the Gypsy Roma Traveller History Month, I've been like libraries and talks with different people and that. So people are still interested in the travelling culture. And, you know, like I think a lot of people came from the culture and have integrated and assimilated, I think. But they like to hear that voice, and some of them come along and share it with me. I'm working with young people just now on, you know, a sort of a musical about climate change, and it's done in the old fairy story of Mossy Coat and the wolf and the raven, and it's modern because it's dance and it's music. But the young have written this, and they are adamant that we have taken a step up into climate change, and we've got Mossy Coat working within hurricanes and tornadoes. Oh, it's brilliant. I just sit back, you know. Sometimes it's going so fast for me. I've got to say to myself, wait a minute, I'm not as young as I used to be. But it's lovely. It's lovely to see the young, you know, putting forward their ideas about that. So yeah, we need the young to get to actually say we are travellers, and we are very proud travellers, and we're not going anywhere. We've been here for generations and we're not going anywhere. So you'll have to take us as you find us. And I think that gives young people an opportunity to follow their dreams, maybe.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much, Jess.
We have a question or two online.
Yeah.
The question here from Nullik. It goes, are non-travellers called settled in Scotland or just Ireland?
No, we call them Scaldies,
Yeah.
and we call them the country people or the country handle. It just depends on where in Scotland you live, because if you're up in the north, you know, you've got a way of you know, describing people. It's probably a Gaelic word. And then you go to the down the central belt, it's mainly Scaldies. And if you go further down, you've got the country handle. So we definitely have a way of you know, of describing people. I mean, the word that people use, the word nackins for travellers. I know it's been used in Ireland. It's not a welcome word. But if you study history, as I have done in the Nomads of the World, you will find that knacking simply means, and this is way before religion and everything like that, it simply means the people of the setting sun, or the westerly people. And so if we were to, you know, share things like that in schools and say to schools, we want, this is what travellers call, a lot of travellers call themselves nackins. And it simply means that the setting sun, and kin, the people of the kin, you know, you've got to look at that word, and because I love it when I get words, but it annoys me when I don't know what they mean. I've got to take other people's, you know, word for it. So if you look up old Druid books, you will find that word is quite commonplace. The people of the setting sun, or the people of the west, the westerly wanderers, the westerly travellers. Yeah, and we've been here forever.
Yeah, I have a Facebook page before. I put on private, I thought I'd use it down the line. It was called the Clans of the Setting Sun.
Aye.
That's without knowing what you just said there. So it was there somewhere in my subconscious. There was something about that. We used to just call everybody country people years ago. Everybody was country people.
Yeah.
Because we're a bit more urban or rural. And settled, it's almost a self-identification by the state. Because in the 1960s, they were talking about, we must protect the settled community. The fact that the government didn't call their own population settled in the first place, it's a strange thing. You know, they'll say, we've got to protect the Irish people or the wider community. They were literally referring to themselves as the settled people. The English. Jeff, I'm going to bring Samantha on for a moment, just in case she falls asleep, because she's going to I will bring you back to say goodbye to in a moment. No, don't say we're going to protect the Irish people or the wider community. They were
they were literally referring to themselves as special people.
Uh,
Steph, I'm going to bring Samantha on for a moment, just to get your phone to sleep, because she's going to I will bring you back to the point in a moment.
Samantha White Donaldson, how are you?
Hi, can you hear me first of all?
Yeah, loud and clear.
That's great, thanks.
How are you?
I'm doing well, how are you? Sorry, I had no idea what was happening, so that's why I logged out. I thought, I didn't know what was going on. Yeah, there was a bit of a technical hiccup here, but it's good now, so.
And you can hear me okay here, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I can hear you, yep.
Because I love the sound of my own voice. But yeah, it's fantastic. Another proud Scottish woman. I mean, you've worked on a couple of projects together without ever meeting each other.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've heard Jess made a very, very proud woman and just a walking specimen of knowledge.
She's my hero.
Fascinating. I will jump into something quite quick because it's like a political side to you. Not political, activism.
Sure.
And it was something that I've been saying to myself for years, the difference between ethnic and indigenous. Now, everyone can be an ethnic group. It sounds so familiar, like tradition, culture, language. And then say, okay, we've got that. We must be ethnic. But you can also be coming to a different land and be ethnic. Like Roma are ethnic. African Americans, Chinese, Polish that come to Ireland are ethnic, or go to Scotland are ethnic. And indigenous is a culture that comes off the land, out of the land, before the colonizers come. So I believe you were involved, and probably still are, with a campaign for indigenous status for Scottish travellers.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that myself and Gavin, who unfortunately is not here tonight, it's something we've discussed. And I guess for me, indigeneity ties us to our land and our culture and our being. And when people think of indigenous, they think of being just the people in the past and no more. But indigeneity is about continuity. It's about, despite having centuries of history, still being able to tell people your culture and your history and that knowledge, but also in the kind of present at the moment. So I guess what doesn't help is in Scotland, there's been so much terminology that's been thrown around, and majority by settled people, things like gypsy travellers, Ghanabut folk, all that kind of thing. And it's unfortunately blurred the lines of what we say who we are as a people and a culture and what settled people think of us. So it's caused people in our own culture to become very confused. And what hasn't helped as well is obviously, like Irish travellers, there's been assimilation policies, and for us it's the 20th century, but also it goes back 500 years. So because we've lost so much of our culture and our identity and who we are, it's caused our own people to argue about our own roots and our origins. And that's why I'm so passionate about conserving our culture, not just from educating settled people's perspectives, but also other people in our community as well. And I rely heavily on, obviously, Jess and other elders in our culture to, I guess, bring forward, that ancestral, traditional, indigenous knowledge that's been passed down through the generations. So yeah.
I think that's actually a really good way of putting it. I might use that from now on. Ancestral knowledge. It is about reliving every aspect of our culture. We all move forward. Culture is like a river, it's forever flowing. Identity is forever changing, and so on. So it is about kind of retaining something that is being suppressed. And I think the more you suppress the people, the more you create inequalities, creates more of a frustration, and it keeps a psychological strain on a people. Have you gone back to school? Have you studied? Have you got to university?
So I actually have a degree in media and communications, and I'm actually considering doing a postgraduate path, doing something completely different, but again bringing it back to traveller culture and that sort of thing. So yeah, I have been to university, and it's interesting because in Scotland we talk about indigeneity and colonialism from a purely Gael non-Nacan perspective. But again, I feel that travellers are not being included in this conversation too often enough.
Absolutely. We were very, very similar here also. What's
Yeah.
the relation between what I just said the non-Scottish traveller population?
Mm.
What's their reaction when you talk about indigeneity and indigenous roots?
They tend to get defensive about it. They tend to, unfortunately, it's not their fault, it's a reflection of the education system. So again, similarly with yourselves in Ireland, pretty much barely anyone knows anything about our history and our culture. And when they look at Nacan history and culture, they tend to view it, I feel, in two perspectives. Firstly, we're a romanticized people of the past. You see the bow tents and, you know, us living out back with, you know, the black and white pictures. And then you get the other not so nice side where we're framed in the media as criminals, thieves, horrible people, when we know that's not true. That's a stereotype. So unfortunately, because settled people or non-Nacan people are not getting that knowledge, and let's be honest, they've deliberately pushed it aside as well. They love to pretend that we don't exist, but when we do exist, it's either because we're bad people or, oh, where are the travellers? I don't see them anymore. They're gone. That's the thing. It's that two double-edged sword perspective. So when I talk about indigeneity and, you know, like settled Scottish people, we have a long history in this country. They get confused as well because they think, oh, but I thought you're Romany gypsies. I thought you came from X, Y, and Z. Oh, I thought you were people from Culloden. So again, it's settled people's narratives that seems to be taking over the history and talking over what we know about our identity and our culture and our perspective. So unfortunately, it's that's colonialism and imperialism. It's the victors taking our history and our identity and our culture and twisting it into something that it's not. So yeah.
I would often say that even talking to groups from America would be the native or the first
Yes.
groups, or Australia or New Zealand. We're not trying to compare our histories. We're
No.
not trying to compare our suffering. We know other groups suffer horrendously compared to our own, as bad as ours had suffered, like chattel slavery. There's nothing that comes close to that. But what we do say, or I do say, is that we do have a common denominator. We do have something in common between all of us.
Yeah.
And that is English colonization.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because last year the Scottish government apologised to the traveller community for cultural genocide, and they actually acknowledged that. But see, the thing about an apology is it's only worth the paper it's written on. That has to translate into action, and it's all good saying sorry, but we've not seen anything in terms of like positive change and action. There are people who have been complaining about the same issues in our community, and Jess will know this herself, for more than 40 years. You know, that's an apology is meaningless if it's not done with any change.
Could you tell us a little bit why that apology was made? What was it about?
So basically, the reason the apology came about is, so it was research commissioned by the University of St Andrews, and it was looking into 20th century policies impacting the culture of Scottish travellers, and the term the Tinker experiments has been used, but I personally don't like that term because it was more than just an experiment. It was a complete deliberate attempt to annihilate our culture and our way of life. So again, these researchers looked back through church records, schooling records, industrial school records, records from the 1800s, and newspaper articles as well. And what they noticed, there was a common pattern of we're scum, they want rid of us, they want to assimilate us, because they viewed our culture as being heathen. And one of the ways that they did this was they took the children away from their parents to try and cut that root. And unfortunately, that's what happened to my mum. She ended up being stolen from her traveller family, put in a children's home, called awful things and abused. for being a traveller, and it was basically, these policies were designed to kill our culture. So that's basically the background. And they got this research done and they concluded that yes, what was done to us is akin to cultural genocide. And they actually compared our experiences to other Indigenous peoples across the world and what they went through as being the same as what we went through. So,
and again, it just echoes very similar to what happened in Ireland.
yeah,
You take the itinerant child,
absolutely. It's the
they
same.
settle homes, settle families, and
Yeah.
re-educate them, and then even created 3 or 4, excuse me, 3 or 4 segregated homes just for the itinerant children.
Yeah.
One of them hit the headlines in the 1970s or 80s as the House of Horrors, where there was endless streaming of abuse that went on. So, and again, same in Canada, that, you know, they took their children, same parts of America, and throughout the Western world where English colonization went. But what's interesting about Scotland is when that was happening, I think right up to the 1980s,
Mm-hmm.
is that Scotland at that time was under probably more of an English government style.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
In 90, it became a Scottish Parliament or something like that.
Yep.
So the apology, as you said, can only mean something if it's followed with actions. But in Ireland, we have a very similar pattern where it's apology, and then they were fearful that there's going to be reparations, there's going to be, the state is going to be sued. And the ridiculous thing about it is, even if they did sue them, what would the people do with the money? It's been on petrol, food, go on a holiday, buy a car, the money still goes back into the economy.
Yeah.
Evaporate into thin air. It goes back into local shops and businesses and so on and so forth. Is there any project you're working on at the moment?
So I'm involved with, and Jess and yourself, we're involved in the first ever DNA study of Scottish travellers, and it's very exciting. And what makes this different to...
Don't tell Jess, but Jess involved with that.
Yes, Jess has helped as well. Yeah. So basically, what makes this different compared to studies?
So,
What was that?
I said, is Jess involved with that? And there's been for the last 4 years that project, I'm knowing Jess is involved.
Yeah, so she's been helping out with various parts of it, just from a cultural perspective. And I actually encouraged Professor Jim Wilson, who's running the study, to actually go to Jess, because again, she's an elder and she's part of obviously the tradition and the culture, and she's a big tradition bearer. So what makes it different compared to a lot of other studies is that it's done in collaboration with the community. So there's actually, like, so there's myself, there's been you, Bernard, we had obviously an Irish traveller side with you there, and Gavin, he's part of it as well, who's not here tonight. So it's been very much done through respect. And I need to point out as well that it's not my idea originally. There's been other people in the community who have wanted something like this to happen. And I guess one of the motivating factors to bring this DNA study is, again, it's reclaiming and taking back our narrative of who we are. And it's to basically hopefully deconstruct some of the settled people's categorizings of us, and hopefully put some of their nonsense labels to bed, basically.
Yeah, and we work with scientists, and we're also working with a group of scientists in Ireland now again at the moment.
Yeah.
And because now we know a whole lot more about the history, there's the microbiome science, and there's a lot more going on. The framing of the science is different. So they did a paper in 2017, and because they didn't have the historical background, they assumed that we have broke away from the settled people. So they said travellers diverged from the settled population, which makes it sound that we broke away, we became this little group, we're dropouts. Of course, except for Dylan, because Dylan's an archaeologist, and he said, well, there was no settlements back then at that time of the break, apart from the English ones, and beyond that we're scaling society. So, of course, microbiome science comes along and confirms that travellers retained an ancient old microbiome that did not come from industrialization, that created settled population. So this time around now, that's going to be framed differently. They won't be saying travellers diverge from the settled people. If anything, most of the settled people diverged from our culture and got assimilated, which I think is the very same in Scotland. And we are fortunate enough, as you said, there's better engagement now with travellers than scientists.
Yeah.
Ones we have now are absolutely brilliant like that. And we slap them out of their jargon world and we bring them down a couple of pegs. But yeah, it's much better, I think.
And that's the thing. With anything to do with Indigenous peoples, it has to be done through respect. And unfortunately, one of the problems that I have with the way things are done in Scotland, and look, here's the thing, I really like the SNP. I'm all for an independent Scotland. But when it comes to travellers, there's too much talking like for us and not with us. And I think obviously in Ireland, you guys will have had a very similar issue. So I guess from a Scottish government perspective, they need to forget the third sector organisations that, you know, are not run by us. Just give us more self-determination. That's the thing. I think they see us as incapable of running our own affairs and determining our future in terms of a self-determination perspective.
I'm glad
Yeah.
for years. And again, when we say it's not a case we want to kick people out.
No.
If people truly wanted to support travel, they wouldn't be having all the top jobs or the top roles. They'd be in the lesser job, working the traveller into the top job and the top roles. But what happens is, and I don't know about Scotland, but and not just Ireland or Scotland, this is written research. It's in India, Pakistan, it's in Canada, it's in America. A lot of these people get wise and they take in certain travellers and they exclude other travellers that are questioning them or criticizing them or critiquing them. And they get pushed out and they take in travellers that are new to it, they're excited to be part of it, and they retain their jobs. Like we have a person back here, and I know I get the trouble for this because they're always telling me that they can't be giving out about the NGOs. So I'm not giving out about them, I'm critiquing them. If they're doing something that's incorrect and the science says it's incorrect and every other discipline says it's incorrect and we've got children taking their lives, I've every right to shout from the rooftops.
Absolutely.
But some of these people have retained power for 30 and 40 years in the same position of power, bringing travellers along with them. And I always thought that was just fundamentally wrong.
I agree.
I'm too deep into it because Dylan keeps saying to me, once I hear NGO, I get triggered. But
Yeah.
I swear to you, it's not against it. They're lovely people. They remind me of the missionaries you read about when they go to other countries. They're almost religious. They're peaceful people. But when you mention changing the system, you're gone. You're out. How dare you dare suggest something like that? Because we're the educated class people. We know better. So is that similar in Scotland?
Absolutely, 100%. It's a same problem for us here. And it's funny because before we came on the call, I was actually speaking about this with Jess. And I think they like travellers who are easy to manipulate, who toe the party line, who are just happy to put up and shut up. And yet when you get people like ourselves that are tired and angry and we're just like, nah, screw this, we've had enough, they don't want anything to do with us. And I've had firsthand experience of this. I've called them out for being performative because they think putting up a post on Facebook saying happy GRT History Month is enough, or having the odd information session cuts it. And I'm like, no, our people are dying, man. You know, we're losing so much of our culture and our heritage and our way of life, and they don't like angry travellers because we say it as it is. And well, to put it like this, I think that's why they don't have anything much to do with me anymore, because I just say it as it is and they don't like it. But they like travellers who are, you know, easily manipulated, who just push the status quo and they tokenize them. And we have a massive issue with that here. So yeah, it's the same.
I imagine it's like this for a lot of travellers. First, when you get involved, you're overwhelmed by it. And you love it. Because you're first not used to meeting settled people who are nice to us. So that's the first thing, and you're taken in by it. It's the first time in a long time you're being treated as an equal. There is in you. But after a while, you do see the pattern. You see the same jargon in every organization, the same people run the same work, same reports. And actually, when I pointed out to me years ago, and it's not that I'm being righteous, that if you keep asking people about their state of mind, about what they're simply taking their life, about depression, you're going to make people depressed. There has to be positive research. There has to be something.
100%. There's this poor pity kind of aspect, the saviorist aspect, that a lot of these NGOs and non-traveller organisations tend to pull into, because they wouldn't exist without that narrative of, oh, we have to save these people because they can't determine their own future. They don't know how to look after themselves, so we have to save them. And I feel this is the problem that we have. And, you know, it gets bloody exhausting having to repeat the same thing over and over and over, and then people just not doing anything about it. And I think positivity has been lost. I would agree with that 100%.
I think one sure
yeah.
that the NGOs in Scotland won't be inviting me over, and the
No.
NGOs in Ireland
Nor
won't
me.
be halfway. Just before I do let you go, is there a few questions anyone would like to ask? Okay. Jess, Jess, I beg your pardon. Samantha, is there any plans to come back to Ireland? Although I won't be invited by the NGO, of course, but have you been to Ireland before?
I have, yes. I absolutely love your country. It's amazing. The history, culture, just, yeah, I love Ireland. I want to go back.
Well, hopefully one day we get you back. Hopefully next year for running. I'm not sure about the funding aspect next year.
Yeah.
If it happens, hopefully we'll get you back and we'll definitely have you on stage.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it, and hopefully one day we get to meet in person.
Yes, absolutely. I'd be down for that. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to go back to Jess and say goodbye to Jess. If she's still there. Take care.
Hi. Yeah, I was. Thank you. Lovely, perfect questions. Excellent questionnaire. Great answers. So thank you so much for that, Bernard.
Thank you very much. And yeah, look at it. Hopefully one day we get to meet in person also. So
Yes, yeah, that'd be nice.
okay, that was the two Scottish legends, and yeah, absolutely brilliant. And thank you again. So just going to take a 5-minute break.
Bye bye.
Take care.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
First team, I'm a superstar, they call me Chris. Yeah. First team, I'm a superstar. They call me Cream, like a Georgia boy. I can switch it up anytime like this. I'm a videographer and I'm on the verse, so when I shoot my shot, I don't miss. Take the shot, take the shot. Yeah, I'm gonna take the shot, take the shot, take the shot. Now feelings, ooh, I develop fun. Now feelings, ooh, I develop fun. Now feelings, ooh, I develop fun. Now feelings.
Diggy out. Yeah.
I can switch it up anytime like this. I'm a videographer and I'm on the verse, so when I shoot my shot, I don't miss. Now feelings, now feelings.
Okay, yeah, I think that was a very interesting conversation. Sometimes I'm better off not talking about travel organizations. But put that to one side, next up was going to be an in-house discussion. And we're going to call it with Lizzie Connors, travel woman who's also a rap singer, who's going to finish off tonight doing a rap song for us. So Lizzie, make the way to the stage. And also, we're going to invite up Chris and Star Stokes, and all the way from Kilkenny, I believe. And also then a remarkable travel woman that you will see on TV, quite famous, Margaret O'Brien, all the way from Limerick. Do we just like to pass it around or something? I know. So we'll pass that mic around or something.
Yeah.
I'll pick up sound, okay, yeah? No, thank you. Okay. Okay, let me start with Lizzie first. Lizzie, how are you? You're going to sing a song for, or just song. Do you call rap or song?
I do rap and poetry, so I was thinking that I'd have to do a poetry instead.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more,
For that.
yeah,
Good job.
instead of, something else, we can't do space.
I see you doing those things alive. It's kind of like you're fighting with each other with words.
Yeah, battle rap.
Battle rap.
Yeah, so I started battle rap when I was about 21, and it was combat anxiety, so I struggled a lot with being able to leave the house, and I just wasn't very good at doing crowds and stuff like that, but I loved writing, and I've been writing since I was 13. I watched 50 Cent's film, Get Rich or Die Trying. It's actually kind of funny story, but I watched 50 Cent's film, Get Rich or Die Trying, and I wrote my first it was Herald, But I wrote like my first little rap in crayon on my bedroom wall. And I kept it for years. Like it was still there until my little brother moved into that room when I moved out. And obviously we handed over it. But I kept that for years and was kind of like telling myself that I know that I'm meant to be a writer. I'm meant to do these things. Education didn't come easy to me because I was pushed out an awful lot. So when I went to an event in Dublin, I didn't even know what happened in Ireland. Like obviously I had seen 8 Mile, Eminem, all that. But I didn't know it was a thing in Ireland. And I went to an event and my best friend's brother was performing and said to the woman that was doing the tickets, I was like, can girls do this?
Yeah.
There was no women. There was basically no women in the room. Like,
Was there many interpreters involved?
no, not really.
But no
So
interpreters, but no
I
women.
brought my nephew. I brought my nephew up and he did a battle afterwards. And I've been trying really to get more people from the traveling community because we're so funny. You know what I mean? We're so funny and we're quick with it.
Yeah.
And we're kind of built for it. You know what I mean? And it's global. It's massive everywhere. It's really big in the UK now at the moment. The Irish scene kind of died out over the past couple of years. But I've been trying to revive it with my own company over the past 5 months. So about 2 years ago, battle rap just kind of fell apart in Ireland. The person that was the head of it just kind of wasn't able anymore. And I thought that was going to be it. That's my outlet. You know what I mean? That's my escape. It's my way of coping and dealing with it.
Yeah, of course.
For like 12 months, I was on TikTok and I was doing lives and I was doing freestyles and it was just any way at all of being able to still perform. And then I went to an event in Dublin last year. And from that, I looked around and I said, I can do this. And I know I can do this and I can probably do it a little bit better than what these people are doing, right? So I looked around and said, I'll take the chance. And my first event, I sold about 12 tickets. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't, I didn't take the word by storm. You know what I mean? Like it took a lot, but it's the passion in me. So what I do with Renegade Productions is we're a grassroots company. So we focus on underappreciated artists. And it's not just rappers. So I have rappers, poets, beatboxers, battle rappers, I have acoustic artists, I have people that do dance hall, like every type of genre.
For those disadvantaged in terms of that didn't get there, couldn't get there for one reason or another, you're given the space to get involved.
Yeah, so I kind of always been pointed at as like I've never really had space where I fit in.
Yeah.
Right? I've always kind of been a little bit different to everybody else. So I kind of saw that, and then I saw the wider, I suppose, hip hop community in Ireland kind of doing the same kind of segregation that I did with my entire lifetime. And I was looking at all these people that are crazy talented and they're so good and they don't get the push, they don't get to be able to go up in front of people because they don't have 25,000 followers and they can't sell 5 million tickets. So I focus on people that genuinely they wouldn't necessarily get the likes. But my next event now in July, we have Wilsey from Limerick. So that's the first travel rapper I've been able to actually get on like my company.
Oh, wow.
The first other travel rapper that I properly know that's, you know what I mean, releasing constantly. And he has a new album out at the moment called Deep Thinker. And it goes into all of the history of everything. He's a brilliant storyteller. He's great at what he does. And I'm glad to have him now, you know what I mean, come along and perform at Renegade, because what I'm hoping to do is get traveler singers, you know what I mean, because there's not many production companies that focus on travelers and the fact that they're so talented. We have some of the best singers in the country. I mean, our entire culture is built off storytelling, singing, and keeping those songs alive through just singing them. There was no way to write them down.
That's a big problem, is that even script writing as well, right? I was script writer selected by Queen Ireland as an emerging script writer. Up to that point, it's industry, and the industry is settled around settled people who usually went to maybe third level education, who can write in a particular kind of way. So if you don't write in a particular kind of way, it's harder to get in. If you're not a particular kind of way, it's harder to get in. So that struggle. Let me just jump over to Chris for a second. Chris, have you ever done any rap music?
Me?
Yeah.
No way.
Did you ever get drunk and you've been
No, I have been trying in the pub now.
I bet yourself in Star down in Kilkenny, which is absolutely brilliant.
I did, and it was brilliant down there when you were down there. In fairness.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's up and I enjoyed it because, one, I believe in what I'm doing, what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And While I say it in a very particular way, because just like you, I didn't fit in. I wasn't given a roadmap, I wasn't given instructions. You had to work it out yourself.
Yeah.
So you end up offending half the nation. Yeah, but you're not telling, I'm not trying to be offensive. Too late, I offended the half the nation. But how did you get involved? And I know, back to Darren, but if Darren's involved with a travel organization, you're passionate about it, obviously, or you wouldn't be there in the first place. How did you drag him in? I know I'm jumping what
I have no other choice. I have no other choice. No, I just give her support. She actually needs to come on now and again.
Chris
Yeah,
talked a
but-
lot about, like, I'd be used to sound more on who's who. say.
I like the history of it.
Yeah,
I like what you're doing as well now. I like the way you're going into the history and find out this and that and all this kind of thing.
the connections and how.
Yeah, I do like that. I do. But I also like, I'm sick of the racism as well. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I know what you're doing as well, and you're dwelling into all that. But I just look for someday that just for even 70% of the racism to go away.
Yeah.
Because we're completely sick of it this day. And I don't think the racism actually changed from when I was a child up to now. We're still trying to hide our identity.
Well, that's the fact that when you look at it that way, it's not only did it happen in our lifetime, I mean, you're a bit mature now at the moment.
Yeah.
But it also happened to our children. We see it happen to our grandchildren. We've seen it happen to our parents. We've seen it happen to our grandparents.
Yeah.
It has never
And the
stopped.
stories of our grandparents.
That's right.
cycle of
Never
Constantly
same
go.
stories.
How's that the other? How's the impossible?
I don't know how the people's getting away with this.
Yeah.
I think that there should be more.
Awareness.
No, there should be more. Just evidence got and prosecuted. I think some people, you have to put your hand in the fire. It has to be burned before you say you can't do that again. It's no point telling someone don't be racist. Sometimes if they're racist, they should be prosecuted.
Yeah.
And that's the only way they have to learn.
Yeah.
And it's just, I definitely don't want my children to go through what we went through.
No,
Now,
absolutely.
the living conditions is better with the travellers. Obviously, that's 100%. We're living in houses, we're needing the mobiles and yards. Okay, that's fine. But the racism has
But you know the sad part about that? Chris?
that's
Living in the wagon or living on the side of the road,
this is the way.
people actually live longer. And if you go back 40, 50 years ago, there was no talks, no records of child suicide. So things are materialistically better. There's more opportunity. There's ways into colleges, universities, all of that. But yet, the psychological well-being got worse and worse.
But the suicide is completely frightening.
I've seen it.
That's a different, it's at a level I've never seen it.
And with the travel up and down, and I know people say, well, it's all happens to settle people too. And I'm not taking anything away from the settle people.
You're kind of the same age as me, and that's how we're
Yeah.
talking. And when I was 11, 12, right like that, if you heard of a child dying, you would say 10 or 12 years of age, it was either an accident on a bike or a drowning or a car accident.
That's
You
right.
never hear of a suicide.
Mm.
Never. And
Yeah.
I think it's so alarming when you're rearing children, because
Right.
Like, I have 7 sons and 1 girl and all this, and it's just frightening.
Yeah.
And you're exposed to all this. They're looking at children doing it, they're looking at people doing it. What's that all about?
Yeah.
It's disgraceful. So, that's all I know.
So you're
It's a frightening thing.
You're relatively new into the NGO world, the support groups. How are you finding them?
I'm enjoying it. I'm not overly new, but I'm being pulled and dragged with years in and out of it. I'm enjoying it. I'm finding it tough. I already know as a traveller the struggles that are out there, you know. But being a traveller woman out there working with other travellers and trying to help figure out how to fix all this, it's tough.
Yeah.
Tough going, especially when you're under a certain umbrella.
Initially, when you go in there, because I have a step and I do to this, and you get very overwhelmed because you start to realize how bad it is for up and down the country.
Yeah.
You're reading snippets of papers, you're hearing reports, everything. It can come an awful lot. So as I do give out sometimes, I also recognize there has to be room for events like this, where it's like something you can celebrate, you can take pride,
And I think
you
that's
can take
why-
a time out.
See, that's why myself and Chris is going around and trying to support as many organisations as hosting these events.
Yeah.
You know, and just highlight them on social media. And
What I would say as well is that the traffic goes both ways. I think there's a lot of good people out there. There's a lot of respect.
Absolutely.
They're family people. There's great people out there.
Absolutely.
Now, but again, in every barrel, there's not. There's the dark side. There's other people that's not there.
I want to say with travelers too.
Yeah, and it's with travellers too. And I think a lot of the travellers out there, the young people, should be it should be talked more that they should try and pull up their socks and say, look, the damage you're causing by arguing and fighting and around the roads and up on YouTubes and waving hatchets, it's sending a ripple effect across our community. And people out there, the settled community, a lot of them say, is all travellers like that?
Yeah.
Or is this fellas like that? And that's why the fear is there as well. So I think we travellers, they should say, look, lad, our community is in a kind of a bad state at the moment, I think, with the suicide, the arguing and the fighting. I think some of them has to look their socks and say, look, lads, we're causing severe harm to our Cavan community.
No, yeah, I don't.
That's my opinion.
No, absolutely. I don't.
And mate, look at me, I probably would have been backlash.
It's so important.
Yeah.
So much
You know what I mean? And it should be highlighted about all the good things with the travellers, but a lot of times there's a lot of bad things out there as well. So what the people has to understand, and what I'd like the settled people out there to understand, that is good and bad. You can't, in the priesthood, you can't judge every priest like it's or fortune. There's good priests out there. Same with the police or the guards. There's really good guards out there, but there's bad guards out there.
But you know what? You know what's not happening with settled people is that when you read a paper, you don't say member of the settled community.
Correct.
Yeah.
But you'll read
Right.
traveller. And what happens is they put the traveller part into their mind. They
Yeah.
all traveller like this. We don't take away the settled people's identity. We tell them that they're gypsies. They're related to Roma. Yeah, well, yeah, correct. Like, so,
Again, it goes back into you when you're rearing children, like it's all, and there's nothing special with my children. We're traveling children, and we're travelers, and that's it. The same, everyone is trying to get on, everyone is passing through, and everyone is trying to make the best of their own lives. But in this day and age, it's not 1960, it's not 1920. In this day and age, I don't think children should hide what they are to get on in life. And
absolutely.
that's disgraceful.
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Absolutely. And Margaret, you're involved. You started a network for travel women, and just like Chris, who you'll see him on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, every social media in the country, but every traveller up and down the country, very famous.
And Tinder.
But you're not, you're not famous for the media, and I just want to Margaret, you're a co-founder of a network for travel women. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I suppose like 5 years ago, myself and another lady, travel woman from Limerick, we co-founded the Limerick Travel Network in Limerick City. Like there wasn't a community development project in Limerick City in over 15 years. So I suppose it was during the COVID times when travellers were at their most vulnerable and they needed supports and stuff like that. So I suppose we were kind of lobbying and asking. We had travellers coming to us, and due to overcrowding, lack of sanitation, lack of information, lack of awareness around COVID, that was the initial seed, I suppose, coming to us and asking for help and support. And we were going on then looking for help and support for them. And basically we were told, well, who the hell are you? You're just two ordinary travel women on the ground, like get away from the door kind of thing.
Wow.
So then kind of on the back of that, then we kind of rallied around and we called a meeting. We went around to all the sites and everything like that, and we basically spoke to all the travellers, and they said, look, something needs to happen. We need to come together as a community. This isn't good enough. You need help and support in Limerick. So they came together, and I think we'd over 100 people at a meeting.
Oh, wow.
And we just, discussed it, and whatever the case may be. So I suppose we didn't expect it to snowball as big as it did or go as well as it did. But I suppose during that time, I suppose the most diplomatic way we wanted to do this was because we didn't want the same families, the same people in the organization, or whatever you want to call it at the time. So we kind of asked reps from each autumn site and each area the travellers were in
I got you, yeah.
to come forward. So those families, and this was all done very diplomatic. Like there was not circuits, but letters given out around saying, yes, we nominate these two people for our site, and we're happy they are spokespersons, so on and so forth. So I suppose from the back of that, then like maybe up to 15 to 20 women came forward. So we would have had reps from all families, all sites, and all areas.
Gotcha, yeah.
And we were determined to make this and have this as diplomatic as possible.
Because
as fair as
sometimes
possible.
you can say you're 14 places. Them 14 places will end up going to one family.
Exactly,
In
or
one
you put it
location.
2 families or whatever. So we were aware of that in other places. So we said, this is not the way we want to do. We want to be fair, we want to be transparent, we want everybody's voice heard, every family's heard.
Multiple families involved.
Multiple families involved,
wow,
yeah. So, and again, this was travel related because it was co-founded by myself and another travel woman. Plus we had these, fixed 20 women that came on board. It was voluntary for many, many years to start. So I suppose from the seed of the COVID, that's how it grew, that's how it, built and so on and so forth. So I suppose the main ethos from there then was to, like you mentioned, somebody mentioned earlier, is that, we get country people in running these organisations and the majority of the funding is going in them.
Yeah.
And they're not empowering travellers and they're kind of keeping travellers down at a level. So they're not doing them out of the job. Not everybody, but
Yeah, of
some,
course,
in
yeah,
some
yeah.
instances it does, and it happens a lot. And like you said, then they kind of target the travellers that wouldn't challenge them or wouldn't, speak up or whatever the case may be. So I suppose that was kind of our ethos then, was to kind of get traveller women in, get them trained up as much as possible, get them educated and stuff like that. And I suppose, like last year, I don't know if people would have seen like 12 out of the network graduated with a master's.
Oh, yeah,
in the
this is
web.
going on the media.
So it was all over the
That's
media.
right,
It was
yeah.
huge. So it was the first time ever in the history of like.
That was your
travel.
network, your part of.
That was our network.
Oh,
yeah,
wow, yeah.
So it was the first time in the history of any organization or university that ever happened, that this big cohort of
And
large
travellers
cohort
did it. From
Travellers did it.
grassroots.
from grassroots. We supported ourselves. We went all the way ourselves. We supported. We done the necessary steps to get women to that ready to that level, and they went into college together. Obviously very difficult because they were all different ages and kids and so on and so forth. A lot of us wouldn't have had much previous schooling and stuff like that. So it was absolutely huge, a huge achievement for them,
Yeah,
both
absolutely.
personally and professionally and emotionally. So like a lot of the women now are out working in the wider community. And, we believe ourselves like the only way to make change for travellers going forward is to have travellers working within the organisations and changing it from the inside out.
Yeah.
And I suppose educating people properly, and like you said, giving people the proper information of where we originated from, our true history, our true identity, and just to make people aware that like we shouldn't have to hide who we are and our identity.
Yeah.
And we're just as good as anybody else, to walk in, hold your head up high, get that job. And I suppose as well, proper culture awareness is very, very important. But
Did you find during that process that there was a confidence growing with the women?
100%,
Yeah.
absolutely 100%.
Because the more, education is the passport to life.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
the more
yeah.
knowledge you get, the more you know your environment, your surroundings, your reading, your writing. It does change it.
But even on a personal level for themselves, throughout that time we were doing the network, the Limerick Travel Network, they also done a research on children education called Traveller Education, Traveller Change Education is the name of the research. That was done 2 years ago by the members of the network as well. And unfortunately, like nothing has changed very little has changed from since you were either to school, like however many moons ago, to following on to the new generations. You've the reduced timetables,
That's right,
segregation
yeah.
of classes. You have the bullying, the discrimination. You have, especially in particular with the teachers, like that low expectancy of travellers that you'll be married by you're 16, you'll be left anyway, and you'll be going on working with your
That's still
dad.
happening, is it?
It's still happening.
Oh, wow.
Very much still happening.
It actually, in fact, that report said that travel children are being segregated.
Mm.
The fact we're still using the word segregated in
Yeah.
2026,
Yeah.
the time when travel children only schools, buses, even growing up, I know Christopher come across it, public times that travelers could only go. So
Well, I was segregated now.
Yeah,
It was kind of 89, 88.
Mm.
Now, it wasn't the teachers. The teachers were lovely. I have no bad memories of the teachers. But what it was, I knew it was wrong, no matter how young I was. I was only 10 or 11. And I was put into this traveller's class. I was only planning to make my Holy Communion.
yeah.
And it was a primary school. It was St. Saviour's in Waterford. A lovely school again. I have lovely memories of it. And in the classroom, 10 o'clock, the 5 or 6 travellers in, you go for the break. 10:30, get back in. And then the 500 pupils of the country people out. And that was going on. So you had 5 little travellers walking around a playground that could fit 1,000. And you just walk around your own and you're segregated, you got a different lunchtime and different lunchtime. But then when I met in Holy Communion, you were out then. Say I went for 6 months and that was it, out. But then when I went back in for my confirmation, which would have been 91, I think.
But you know that happened, say, in Waterford, one school, one classroom, you'd say something, that would be bad enough.
Yeah, it happened all
Up
over.
and down the country.
He's made the story with my father when he was at school in the 60s. He just get a little box of grains and he sent down to the back of the class. It wasn't really a segregated.
That happened in the 80s.
Yeah.
That happens a lot more. And even the modern times, where this is meant to be all behind us, still private children being on reduced timetable.
Yeah.
So what? It's so
Taken
different.
out, taken out into SMA classes as well, like without the child being assessed and without consulting the parents.
I had a reduced time there.
You have a reduced time.
Yeah. And they told me that I didn't have the mental capacity to learn languages. I taught myself 3 different languages and doing
Exactly.
so there's absolutely no way you can tell me that I don't have the
They're not
capacity to
even
learn
assessing the kids.
I was told that I couldn't even learn Irish.
Really?
I'm not even allowed to learn Irish.
Maybe Dylan was back to the talk in Kilkenny because
Yeah.
you know these days travellers are slow, not
Yeah, yeah.
intelligent. They need special needs. They need special needs teachers because they can't understand.
Yeah, yeah.
Or me and Dylan was saying, now we need them special needs teachers for the 7 people in Kilkenny, but they couldn't understand one word we were saying. Apart from the coordinator, it was absolutely beautiful and wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, they would not justify colonization. They said that, well, Cromwell wasn't so bad. He went up 20% the year behind.
Every record.
We have houses, we have evolved, and we're to explain to them, this doesn't take any away from you. You're like, couldn't get it. They were thinking on the record, these people need special teachers. There's certain people can't be educated.
Yeah.
You know, we have joke, of course, but that's how it was. Sarah, you as a mentioned, you're new to it, and you've just heard a good bit been said here now. And we're talking about, say, travel pride has its benefits, it has merits. It has a kind of a pick me up celebration and make new travelers feel good and proud that other travelers are doing it. Is there anything you're working at the moment in Kilkenny?
I'm working with a group of young traveling guides and I'm going to try and work on building up their confidence. I know it was from the Traveller Pride week or 2 that you have all this sense of pride and that, but I feel then when it's over there, just the place
That's right, yeah.
and I want to instill that in the children continuously, going forward. One girl there, she didn't leave school, she graduated and her sister done the same the year before and she's not working, she's not doing anything. I don't want to say anything to this girl. So my job is like I'm working with from ages 10 up to 18. And I want to work with these girls and I want to try and build up their confidence and talk about the things that they want to do. Give them the confidence to pursue it and talk as well about like you wouldn't, I'm assuming you wouldn't get a country person to go in and talk about marriage to the young. And I'd like to instill that you can get married, but you can continue your education as well, maybe. That's what you'd like to do. But everyone wants to do their education, everyone wants to get married. But if you want to do both,
there's different kinds of education. Like the one called formal education is one. There's a lot of things that travelers can do that most people in formal education couldn't do because they're educated differently. But we're led to believe there's one kind of education and you don't measure that. There's something wrong with you, which is not the case at all. And the project you work with young girls, is it like a 1 year, 2 years, the summertime?
So for me, it's brand new, but it was going on a few months beforehand. We were getting a few more girls in on it.
Yeah.
Now, it might increase or it might decrease coming into the summer months with school being off. A lot of travellers will go away travelling, a lot of travelling children won't get an opportunity to go on holiday. So we are going to try and set up a nice summer camp in O'Loughlin Court where we are. And just that's my goal anyways, to work with this particular group of traveling girls and then see what then maybe we can work with the schools then later in the year when they go back in September. Bring some cultural awareness to some of the schools. There's a program going on in Waterford called Brighter Futures. And I was at the evaluation there last week in Carroll Hotel. And they're a group of 3 women that went into the schools, went into 13 schools I think it was. And they went around and they promoted traveller culture.
Yeah.
Now they did take out the children. A lot of people said, well, why didn't they teach it to the entire class? Babies. So that probably will happen very soon. But the sense of pride from all these children and the delightment and how I want to try and instill that to the children in the schools in Kilkenny.
Interesting, before talking to the travel report, they told me it was 1919 was the last school of segregation, but it was
1990.
it was self-segregated. In other words, the farmers wanted it. So they're in their own school, and they were like, "When you have to be, integrated and all this kind of stuff here, you won't learn." They said, no, they come out the most competent people ever. And there's one thing they never heard before, it's called the knack. But they heard it in every other school, every other yard.
Yeah.
It's interesting from what Sarah does to where Margaret was, and even where you were. Like, you didn't have the opportunity to talk about the badger. Nobody come into you at 10 years old and talk to you. But even later life, there was probably no opportunity available for the older women. So what you're doing now is what Margaret was doing to the older women. But Margaret wouldn't be doing that when your projects are successful and widespread, because you got them at a very young age, and the confidence already going up.
But to me, I want to leave. Sorry, go on.
Oh, you go ahead.
This might be like a.
No, I'm involved in that. But there's a couple of friends of mine, Paddy Sweeney and then Davey Hunt. What's the organization there? Yeah. They're going to try and do a podcast every week to try and highlight some of the things. I think two main things for me and you is the mental health and the rows and the arguing. And I think with the rows and the arguing, I think it's a lot to do with the younger people. And I think if they were educated a small bit or listening to a few podcasts here and there, that it's not just about young men going out in the car, taking this and scrapping a motor or anything. That will come back on you. It'll come back on your family. And it causes a ripple effect. It causes stress with the old people, stress with the women, the mother and fathers, stressed out their mind. Is his son going to jail?
Oh, it destroys family.
It destroys family. And it brings not only bad luck. And I think there's not enough of education on that. There's nothing for you. This isn't a great thing of going around with a car tonight or around with a hatchet. I can get this fella back or I can get that fella back. You're creating hell for your family.
Years
You're
ago,
creating hell for your community.
you heard lots of farmers talk about that they bring the sons off, the mother would bring the daughters off. They had a tradition. They were kept busy, and they pick up habits, they pick up trades, they pick up the gift, the gap, whatever it might be. That was a continuation of doing that. But when you cut that off and show them into housing estates, and then you other them, and you tell them that they're lesser, what do you expect if you keep poking a child? You're going to make them aggressive, angry, and bitter when they grow up. So I see a lot of that internal conflict, internalized oppression, or lateral damage.
Too much arguing on.
Yeah, but where's it come from? It comes from when the people are being broken down so much. Yeah, and where the venture, this is universal. It's in America, it's in other places. You'll see the exact same thing. They end up turning in on each other because there's no outlet, there's no escape.
Well, there's something gone wrong because you're my age group. So when me and you were younger, there was hardly no suicides and hardly no rows. You wouldn't see the big feuds.
They were well arranged.
Yeah, they were. Look at me. If it wasn't a bit of a fair fight, it was open done with the opposition. But I think the fair fights now are a bad idea now. Because they'll go back for too long. I'll fight you 12 weeks. I'll fight you 10 weeks. Long term and makes bad blood. And then you have these things happening, all the bad blood. And then there's a loser. Then there's bad blood then when someone loses. I think if you can shake hands after a fight, shake hands before. It's just not how I was looking at it. Lately, what I see in YouTube, with the people's houses getting broke up and the children and the petrol bomb, I think it's disgusting.
Oh, it
is what it is.
It only gets worse.
I think if you can nip things in the bud before the start, stop all this backbiting, this, that, and the other. It just leads, you can have children that high. It could be the cause of man.
It's not like because we are, when you take what's happening in the sexual world, every Saturday night up and down the country, come out to a nightclub, someone's getting assaulted, someone's getting beaten up. There's a vile crime happening up and down the country within the sexual community, but they never get highlighted as a community. It's always individuals. So I think there's a whole breaking down we have to get through to travelers and give them something, give them a positive outlet. And what you were saying a moment ago, Lizzie, is very much like that. You created a foundation, an organization that gives hope to people. Instead of saying, no room for you here, or not you because you're not educated enough, you're not smart enough, or you can't learn 3 languages, whatever it might be, that doesn't.
I feel like the people that are doing the arguing and everything like that, as funny as it is, and it might seem absolutely ridiculous to some people. Putting a battle up. You get me, right? So to create a way of you getting your anger out.
I don't think that's going to happen to you. Fellas, I know that's not going to happen. Battle axe.
It's battle axe to me. A lot of times when
That's what
in
the
her
documentary.
rage, I've been able to take it out on a opponent, and then afterwards you can say the most horrible things to one
Well,
another.
there's
As soon as the cameras are off, you give each other a hug. And
Yeah,
you-
there's not truth to that, right? Because if you go to a boxing club, it takes a lot of anger off. You go play football, it takes that stress off.
But I do
You have
have
to have an outlet.
I know it was
Yeah.
funny, but it's like, you know what I mean? Like you're constantly, there's these call out videos. So like, you know what I mean? They're constantly saying things to one another. Half the time they're fairly
Strange
confident
enough,
what they're saying to one another.
Traditionally
So you
enough,
imagine what two of them
that's
say.
a very old part of culture.
Yeah.
I go back the documents written 100 years ago, where the fans used to write to each other, insult each other. That was their videos.
And I think the YouTube was ever taken to a different level.
Yeah, but even when they're fighting with the English,
Old game culture,
yeah,
like,
correct.
so
They
we're
say
not
to the
like-
English, sit out your fittest soldier. I
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
fight that person because he's not fit enough. He's not good enough.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Same thing Trevor does. I'm not justifying it. There has to be an outlet.
Yeah.
But as far as I can see, is that we're trapped in a situation that we cannot get ourselves out of because we're surrounded with a lot of
To me, it's important.
misinformation, false paradigms. Yeah, we have to question. You said yourself, teaching the culture, bringing the empowering young
But I
women,
think it's
educating
years of
people.
oppression, years of rejection, years of discrimination, like that builds up, and you're watching it for years and years and years, like, you know, even like the recent, like Appleby Fair, you know, you have like the face cam,
That's right. Facial
facial
recognition.
recognition now.
Yeah.
They probably have it in big events as well, but do you know what I mean? But what I was watching on the media anyway is that, like, you know, police were coming in and they were like pulling innocent families out early in the morning and da. So I mean, when you're growing up constantly, and it's from, you know, cradle to the grave, like when you're growing up constantly being judged, being like, being, you know, and I'm not playing the victim card here now.
No, you're firmly balanced.
But I mean, yeah, but like, you know, like you go to school, you're being bullied, you're called Janaka, you're called this, you're other, as you said, you're
Yeah.
being,
Yeah,
you know, it's believed it's all your fault and you're different and you're not good and you have nothing positive to bring and you are stupid and you're not capable of learning and, you know, and that transfers then like even onto like not wanting travelers to live in the same housing estate or in the same area, or even like, oh, I'd want my son playing with them over there, you know, and
Yeah.
this kind of thing. So it's transferred not even at school, but outside of school, out. Do you know what I mean? Then when they're teenagers, it's a case of like, well, what's the point of staying in school? Like the teachers think I'm not worth teaching, or I'm not going to get a job anyway. So what's the point of staying? And then that's where the whole idle mind, idle hands comes
Yeah,
to play.
yeah.
And it's that bitterness and it's that anger over years and years, and they're watching their parents, their aunts, their uncles, their grandparents, the same thing happening over and over and over. And like the boys might want to go, like we were at Richie Casey's Proper Pride the last day in Martin Collins in the play. And I thought that was brilliant. Michael Collins, sorry, Michael. But one of these things, you know, he kind of originated was like that he just gave a small example of boys went out, played a match, won trophies. Everybody was told, come in, lads. Yeah, all the teams now come in, collect your trophies. So the Travel Boys went off to collect their trophies and they weren't allowed in, you know, to collect the trophies.
Oh, wow.
Everyone else was allowed to collect. And that was based on the true story from his whatever. So I mean, it's just examples like that, you know, when you're constantly being othered, rejected, you're not wanted, you're not welcome here, you can't live beside
In
us,
so-
you're
in
not
social settings, social work,
no,
whatever
so
it might be,
obviously that is going to have a play in anybody's
they
mental
have
health.
cases that they play
Yeah.
out the court, and this person was very aggressive, they were very violent.
Yeah.
And then they find out he was infected as a child, he was
Yeah.
abused as a child. The same
Child's
thing
trauma.
applies to a
Yeah,
community.
yeah.
If you keep
100%,
abusing
yeah,
them,
yeah.
there's a breaking point.
Yeah.
And the whole intergenerational trauma is when a child picks up the traits, the habits of an angry mother and father.
Yeah.
Even if they're not angry at the child, they're
Yeah.
still angry at life.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
they
yeah,
pick up that and they grow up with it. So it's a continuation, and we are locked into that cycle. That's why
There's no plan to get better either.
but there's no way out, really.
There's no way
Yeah,
out.
it's
We're
like
here.
fishbowl,
We're still
yeah.
hiding. We're a traveler. We're still
So
taking
yeah,
off our jewelry when we walk to a pub. We
Yeah.
still have to get a countryman
That's
to get a
right.
hotel first time for a wedding.
That's right.
So it's no further on.
Yeah.
So when's it going to
Even
end?
more so
Like
with
10
me
months.
running the production company, it's ridiculously hard for me to get venues. I have to use my stage name. I can't use my actual full name for an email, or I have to use Renegade Productions, because if I go as myself, they're going to tell me no. But then I go as the company and I'm allowed in.
Yeah.
So it's always like, I've always been like, there's one venue that I work with in Dublin, the International Bar, that's been amazed ever since I started Battle Rap, all of it, nearly 10 years. They've always let me in there to use this
Brilliant.
place. They're honestly incredible people. But there's a lot of places. I tried to get an event going in Galway. It's pretty much not
You're
happening.
attracting the traveller on.
Yeah, right. So I'm trying to get Galway. I tried to do Limerick. I'm hopefully getting something done with Wilsey in Limerick soon. But I'm literally stuck in Dublin because the only venue that will actually give me the time of day is in Dublin. And even
Just restricting your work then basically.
yeah.
You see where it
I like
balances,
to bring it all over.
you see where it balances out, where it's one thing there with we should do this and we should learn this and we should behave. And on the other hand, you've got the external stuff, oppressing them, accusing, dehumanizing them, rejecting them, discriminating them,
Maybe
terrorizing them, and it's endless. And it's microaggressions. It doesn't have to be blatantly obvious. It's the refusing of fun. So while we have to take some level of responsibility. And I think we're already doing that. You're doing it with young children. You're doing it with those who are disadvantaged. You're doing it yourself, Chris. You're doing Margaret with young tribal women of all ages. We are trying to do it. We are trying to do it at our own.
We can only do our best. We can only do our best.
No funding, no proper infrastructure, no support that they would call worthwhile. So unless that happens, we're paying against the wind kind of thing. It's very difficult.
Very difficult.
If the government were to turn around on surface, if the government will turn around tomorrow and say, look, on open check, tell us how much you need or what you need, what would you do with it? How would you benefit the situation of travel? Bad luck.
Honestly, what I've been doing really with music is I ran a creative writing workshop in Galway University in March for Traveller this few weeks. So I had 8 young travellers between the ages of about 13 and 16, I'd say, like from maybe first year to third year, so just junior cert students really. So I had them in, and what I noticed was already, right, so I had 4 boys and I had 4 girls. The boys were very much engaged in everything that was going on, where the girls were a little bit more withdrawn. And it made me realize that we need more outwardly creative people in the community that these girls can look up to, because there is plenty of male role models in the community.
Gotcha,
There's a lot of them for these young boys to look up to. But I feel like with creative writing or anything, we're all storytellers at the end of the day, right? And at the end, like, my way of being a storyteller is I write through rap, and I've always loved rhyme, I've always loved all that. And it helped me an awful lot as a child, growing up as a young adult, trying to find my place. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to push that more onto the younger traveling community. And I have 23 nieces and nephews. So all of them have pretty much finished school, because I'm constantly in their ear and I'm constantly telling them, get your education, go out there, change things.
So if you had the right kind of investment support, that would enhance your.
I'd be able to go to pretty much every school in Ireland. Do you know what I mean?
And you can measure that and would say the curriculum, where it becomes part of the education, say, young travelers have this option on the studies. Say, I want to do this, and they explain what it's about. Yeah, and that would change, wouldn't it? Would help.
It would make a massive difference, to be honest. I think what's not working is everybody trying to do the same thing. Like, I feel like everybody is, like, everyone, yeah, it's great to have all the activism, all of that. You need it, obviously. But at the same time, there's people in the background. Do you know what I mean? The creatives, the singers, the songwriters, the people that are writing books that they can't get. Either they're not educated enough or no one believes in them. You know what I mean? So if
you're not part of an organization or part of a familiar uniform, if you're not recognized as someone that's in the system already, it's very difficult to get them opportunities. No, absolutely. Sarah, yourself.
I think, I don't know exactly what I would do, but I just mentioned ITM there. I mean, they have a leadership program. They done a pilot one last year. Again, it's a very new team, and they're trying to work with the younger travellers, men or boys and girls, and build them up for the community. So I think I would pump loads of money into, again, building confidence, building up the younger youth for, like, if I had to get the training that I'm starting to get now,
Gotcha.
if I had to get that in my younger youth, I'd be amazing, I think.
Yeah.
But there's just not enough training out there for the younger travellers. It's all in, like, back in school. Don't get me wrong, I'm a big advocate for school and education, but it's all based around school. But it'd be nice that in the organisations or in certain places that we polish or show through like Tuesdays and for.
One of the concerns is that we're not in the education system. Like we are the person, but who we are, the people, identity and culture is not in there.
Yeah.
So you're almost like de-educating a person. But also because you mentioned earlier on about say travel pride and confidence builds us up, but then it goes down again because you would want something that's structurally outwards and onwards. But it doesn't just stop at building up someone's confidence or leadership. There'll be something to kind of
Yeah, and with ITM, they're restricted to numbers, they're restricted to maybe just boys this year, or just girls this year, they're restricted to their own Leinster this year, and it was Munster last year. Like, wouldn't it be great? Why should they be restricted? Why can't they reach the entire country?
Yeah.
They're a great organisation, but why haven't they got the funding or whatever it is that they need, or the resources to go out to all schools, all the sites, all the organisations and approach teacher and ask them what they're wanting to do. And if it's leadership skills for create help, because it's about building up
the
their.
state still a lot of damage to problems. Don't get them away from
Oh,
it.
yeah.
And they're not enough to understand that, right? And they don't fund us in to get out of the damage that being completed in the first place or started. So again, then that's like good.
If I had the funding, I would say it'd be two things to me. I think that the travel accommodation would be number one, because I'll give you an example in Waterford.
Yeah.
They built a 12-bay site in Waterford. I was there in the site myself. They have a 12-bay site that was made in 1990. And then you wind on all these years in, and it's still a 12-bay site. And there's nothing. You have crowds of families that's living in top one.
Yeah.
And that is a big part in fueling an Ireland as well, because they can't agree.
That's right.
They have all these families packed in, they know where to go, to have children, to have big families, 6 children, 7 children, 8 children, and then they get married. And they still know where to go. And where are you going to go? Going back to another family, I know where else to go, you know where else to put me. So I think they're getting big funding, they're getting millions and millions of pounds. I don't believe in building big sites. I think the days of the 40 bays and the 20 bays is gone. I think that's going to be trouble. I think it should be small sites, 5 bays, 6 bays, and scattered around. And better living conditions. There's a site of water. This is a genuine fact. There's no back door in the houses. How in the name of God this is real?
And the fire.
There's 12 bays, yeah, there's 12 bays, right? It bungalows in it, no back door. So what's the fire problem?
Remember happened
That's
in
illegal.
Carrick Mines.
Yeah.
And what happens in the plane and the victims?
Yeah.
100%. Well, I think the accommodation has to be there, because they're getting millions and millions anyhow, and it's just put to the side, right? That. But the other thing as well, with young men, and I have children myself, and a lot of them are taken out of school. They don't finish their leaving cert. I think there should be some kind of, I don't know, like a factory thing or.
I mean, won't just the master works. We're
Yeah,
going
they
to
they go and they can say,
It's
"Look, I want to be
exactly
I want to be a plumber now. I want to be an electrician."
Yeah.
But I'm not saying there's nothing special about traveling, right? That they don't have to finish their leaving cert. But there's a lot of them out there that didn't,
That's right.
and they need help.
Yeah.
And they need to be able to go to these people. Look, he hasn't got his leaving cert. He wants to become a plumber. He wants to become an electrician.
Well, we'll go back to the same thing about
You know what I mean?
teaching them the history of the culture,
Correct.
and then reducing their timetables, and then segregating them in their own kind of small
A
ways.
lot of traveling children.
You're not making a lot of good
in their
experience.
mind, all the one, I can't wait to get married. And then I can't wait to get the goal or get married.
Yeah.
And when the honeymoon period is over, then you're left.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Another
You have
cycle.
nothing to go back.
Yeah.
It's just another cycle. I think the accommodation, something has to be put in place for young traveling men, 16, 17, 18, that the school didn't work out. And it's not their fault. It's just the way we're all real.
They're victims.
They're victims.
Yeah.
And they be put into place and well, look, you can have a cert if you say 2 years with me. And if they put in the effort, award them it, and they can have their own little business, they can do their plumbing, because it's very hard for them to get a job. Even if they have a leaving cert, they still can't get jobs. Over their names, because of Stokes and McDonough, Sweeney,
Yeah.
you're all agree,
Yeah, same thing.
is a traveller's name.
That's right.
And that's it. And when they look at you, yeah, look, I'll get back to you.
That's right. Double book and booked out. Something.
I'll get back to you now. That's the way, you know the story.
Margaret, it puts the same question to yourself because it keeps coming back to that thing. It's like even if we did have better education services or better health services or better accommodation, there's still something kind of missing. And it's that intergenerational trauma, it's that rejection, that hurt. And if that's not rectified and talked about, so this is an island, right? This island has been devastated many times. There's been over 30 genocides on this island by the English. The famine, 1 million people dead. one devastation after that, and it's never been talked about.
Yeah.
It's always been suppressed. Even the second people that, like in Ireland in 2018, the third highest mental health issues in Europe. In a small island, schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, certain people included, but not talked about. So if you had that open check and said, okay, what would you do to alleviate this pressure, this stress? What would you do? And not to put all the pressure on you one go or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose for me, I'm a huge advocate and believer for travelers working for travelers, empowerment. It's a personal trigger for me when I see, and it's no disrespect to country people at all, but I see country people coming in, we're getting funding, 2/3 of it is going on, management and administration and that and everything. And then the travellers on the ground are getting the break from, and here you go now, up you go, and they're being put in then to do Mickey Mouse courses that they're never going to benefit out of and never going to do anything. So I suppose that was the whole thing of us encouraging the women to go all the way and to go to UN. Now, I'm not saying university is for everybody, it's not. If it was up to me, I would, especially the younger generation, I would kind of like, I suppose, number one, have travellers as education liaison workers and liaising with the kids, liaising with the parents, liaising with the schools, and kind of coming together and say, okay, look, Margaret is absolute shite at school. She doesn't want to stay, she wants to leave, but she's interested in A, B, C, D. How can we support her? The same with Johnny.
Yeah.
And kind of get that as a collective thing together going. And all it takes is a couple of role models.
Does it benefit for a young child in any system to stay and another person like them?
Yeah.
About me,
No better person to understand the travel.
Only a traveller themselves.
Yeah. And that's it.
So get travellers working for travellers, stop wasting all the funding on country people. And that's no disrespect to country people at all. There's a lot of great country people, but that's where like 70% of the funding has been wasted on. And that's why there has been no progression, no mental health is getting worse, suicide is getting everything, higher school rates is getting worse, everything, everything is getting worse for us. So that's my thing, is just get travellers,
it's definitely a crisis situation, but it's also an internal crisis situation because
it's a big crisis.
You've heard of it in Scotland, you've heard of it yourself, you've heard of it. We're not blaming settle people in the end.
No, we're not blaming them.
We're trying to tell them is that they're not listening.
We're stuck in something we can't do.
That's right.
We're stuck in something that we can't do.
But
They're making
they're stuck in a
decisions on
system.
behalf of travellers.
They're stuck in a system that isn't oppressing them. They're stuck in a system where they get a wage, they survive on it. Yeah, we're the ones that are paying the price for that. And again, if they brought in a group of travellers who are so used to that system, repeated what they were told, you'd end up the same thing again. Now, it would help just a little bit to travel do it, but that whole system has to change. They have to get to the roots of who travellers are, how do we get here, why are these systems in existence, where did they come from, and once they iron out that, because then you can teach it to a child, because you can teach a child big long words of dinosaurs. No, if the child can learn them words, they can learn about systems, institutions, settled people, travellers. It doesn't separate us. It doesn't make us different or against each other. It actually brings us together because both labels were born out of colonialism anyway. One last question I'll ask you before I let you go. What is it to be a traveller? What could you pride? What makes you proud? What would you like the other young travellers to be proudful given everything we talked about, which some of it has been kind of heavy.
Honestly, I'm just proud of where I come from. Like I look back, and my grandmother lived in a wagon. My mother was riding tents, and they had my mother had a whole different outlook on life. You know what I mean? And she's so she walks on her bare feet to the ground to the earth, and she's very outdoors. She doesn't like being in the house.
Wow.
My mother does not enjoy being in the house that she's in. My father, he's grand because he likes his comfort. My mother would much rather go out in the tent in the back garden and have an open fire and cook on that. And my auntie lives in granny flat with no electric and no running water. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of kept the old way of living alive. Still, they have a generator, you know what I mean, if they need.
Now, how much of a health benefit that is now to the settled people? you know, save them billions and save themselves a lot of illnesses. Sarah, same question to you.
For me, it's just a sense of, sorry, no, I'm freezing. Just asking that question.
Okay. Say
From
something.
my door, really, see. What is
What is
I'm not to get this one.
I looked at that bottle of wine over there.
what is we say to be proud to be in travel? What gives us pride? What should give us pride? What would you like the other young travelers be proud of and still have that pride?
For me, it's kind of what I'm doing. And again, I'm not trying to make it too great because I'm not. I'm worried what critic I am. But for me, it's the fact that I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, and I'm very dedicated to my family, and I'm full on with my children and my daughter-in-laws and my grandchild and my husband. But being able to go back then to education, get out there and work with travellers, I feel very good in myself doing that. You know, that I'm a role model. As we were saying earlier, there's no better people to work with travellers than travellers themselves.
Absolutely, yeah.
So for me to be going and work with a group of girls that I can relate to, because I have daughter-in-laws in the age group. I have my own girl who's only 10, around 11. And I was a young woman myself one time. So I remember all of them, like I'm really connected to them. So that gives me a great sense of pride of being a traveller today. And I'm really trying to do that in my little girl and me from young kids as well. But more so me to girls, because I can see how tough travelling girls are on themselves and to each other. So for me, I think I'm a very good role model in today's age that I can be all those things.
Self praise is no praise, Bernard. But you know, just get to me the most important.
Anyway, Mary.
No. With me, it was just my grandfather and my grandmother. I think that I've never been to Sligo before, but I have a link to Sligo. I've told you that earlier on. It was my uncle Thomas. He was born here, and I heard the story that Tom and Dinah pulled in, my grandfather and grandmother. They had a shelter in the pulled in, and she had a child. Thomas was born. This is 1951, 52, something like that. And the riverbank broke. It was the winter, and flooded the tent. They all had to pack up and leave and go on. The same night you had the child. Now, it's not alone that. There was other horror stories where my grandmother had a set of twins, Dr. Mercian, and they died. And I think at the same time, they couldn't even be buried in the graveyard because wasn't baptized. You know what I mean? Horror stories like that. And then you're meant to forget about being a traveller, and you look about what brought you into the world. These great people that survived the famine, survived maybe Cromwell, and you're meant to be ashamed of them people. And that's where we came from there.
Absolutely.
And I think we have to take great heed of that. Teach it to our children. Don't be ashamed. You shouldn't have to hide who you are or anything like that. We mightn't see it in our lifetime. But I hope we see a bit of it at the end of it. That's what I do. And I think the greatest people in the world, and I'll run down the country people. I think the greatest people in the world was the Outland Travelers. They helped one another. They were respectful. There was hardly no fight, no arguing. They looked after one another. The mothers of them, when they make a big pot of porridge, they feed the whole town. And where is that gone now? It's not going to. What we're dealing with now, feuding and suicide. It's an absolute disgrace. If we just take a leaf out of all Blancos years ago, we'll be better people.
I think we're making them connections. It's very Margaret, yourself.
No, it is kind of Chris. Yeah, same again. It's kind of, I suppose, for me, the pride is watching where my mother's people, even me is younger. Do you know what I mean? I'm not too far off your age, probably older anyway. But you know, I suppose watching what they've overcome, and the proudest thing for me is that watching travellers, the resilience that travellers have is next to none. Absolutely next to none. Like we've been down, and again, not playing the victims because we're not victims. We're survivors. We're warriors. Like to see, like being downtrodden, the poverty, the discrimination, the everything, you name it, like
left, right,
and centre, getting it at all angles, and we still get up, and we still want to fight, not fight literally now.
No, I know.
But as in, we still want to empower ourselves and our community, and you know that.
Get up broken and try to carry yourself with pride.
Exactly, and that's a lot of the reason I went back and did what I did. Is that I went back as well as a single parent, as a mature student. In my late 30s, went back to college, you know, got my degree, whatever, turned around and then kind of held the door open for other women and kind of like, well, look, if I can do it, and I'm in my second late 30s, early 40s, 5Gs, you can do it. And it's just about having role models and having someone, if you just have that one person to believe in you, like there is nothing in this world Travers cannot achieve
Yeah.
with any bit of education, because we have
Support and guidance.
and the support and the guidance and somebody to believe in us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And having these positive role models, the likes of everybody here today, you know, having these positive role models and having young people looking up and saying, do you know what, like if Nana can do it, like we had 3 generations
Yeah.
of women, and it was absolutely beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? And if they can say like if Nana can do it, and or if Mammy can do it, or whatever, of course I can do it, and my child can do it, and do you know what I mean? And that's how
The ripple effect.
the ripple effect.
You know what I
what
like
mean?
about
And-
this panel is that we covered a lot in what is needed.
Yeah.
One is opportunities when we haven't been given them.
Yeah.
To work with the youth is very important. To name it, don't be ashamed to name
Yeah, yeah,
what's
yeah.
wrong and what's bad in the community either, and highlight it. Because you don't name it, and you don't highlight it.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
You have
manifests.
to talk. about it.
Yeah, and the opportunities you create, Margaret, to give them college, go back to school, give an opportunity to older women. I don't want to say too old, but older women than the women you're working with, or you girls, is that all of that combined
Yeah.
is what we should be doing and could be doing,
Yeah.
and we're doing it as Travers. I think that's powerful.
But give Travers, give Travers a chance. Just give him that chance. Believe in
Absolutely.
them. And you know what I mean? Like, you know, that it's so proud to see, you know, women of all ages and children, whatever, just succeeding in life, going out, grabbing the opportunity, giving that opportunity and giving that chance and using those chances, you know, going out, sticking with the college, you know, going out and getting jobs and sticking at the jobs and just standing up tall. And you know what I mean? And saying, look, here I am, I can do too. Do you know what I mean? And just despite everything, you know. Yeah.
Okay.
That for me is the most proudest, you know.
Well, thank each and everybody for coming
But
up.
the one tiny
Go
thing
on.
that's, no, I know. Just that, I'm not an expert or I'm not a professor or anything like that. This goes out to even the youth,
Yeah.
or the young men out there, 25-year-olds and 30-year-olds and all that. I think you should just take a good look at your mothers and fathers, such a hard life to win through. And even a lot of them has grandfathers that's alive and grandmothers that's alive. And I think for the older generation to sit back and look at the younger generation, she kill them under and fighting and arguing the whole time. I think it's a terrible, terrible thing.
That's right.
And I think it just brings a lot of depression to families. And
If
a doctor
everything
told me
everything
one
we
day-
survived,
yeah, a doctor told me one day, he said depression and stress and all that kind of thing.
It's like the
linked to
body.
cancers, it's linked to
right.
diseases
Yeah.
and heart. And you're giving the older people donkey
Yeah.
torture. And they need a bit of respect
Worry,
over where
fear,
they came from and what they
anxiety,
did with.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think try and nip things in the bud with the feuds and arguments, because every argument that ever was ever brave, and this is the fact now, every argument, the majority of arguments, if you go back, which are the people that is arguing, if you go back to the photographs, you'll see the older generation all camped together,
That's right.
living such a lovely life and being the best of friends.
Yeah.
So there's something going wrong with you,
Absolutely.
and they should. That's all.
And I think we touched on a lot of it anyway.
Yeah,
But anyway,
we
listen,
touched on that.
Yeah.
thank you, Liz, Lizzie, thank you very much. You're going to do a phone for us.
Yeah.
And Sarah, thank you very much. Chris and Margaret, thank you very much.
I want very much suits today.
All right, let's give it a page. Yeah, thank you.
Don't mind me while I perform. Anyway, the light stop tonight, imminent. No one gives a thought toward the itinerant. Segregated in education, set the pace for segregation. Ireland as a nation failed, the families left waiting, pulled from our land and our families and roads, and we were placed in a brick cell and told that it's a home. You should never suffer because of culture. It shouldn't be an issue. Why does all our funding get soaked up like a tissue? Yeah, I'm gay. We don't see that in my culture. I was turned away from most doors and treated like a vulture. My family is confused. My cousins turned to strangers. Badly abused. I was begging for a saviour. Sadly amused by the comments filled with hatred. I was just a child. I needed guidance. Instead, you want to cover it and hide it. I'd fight to be myself. I'm still fighting for the right to be myself. I know I have to make it right. To the kids in my life, I know I have to be a light and show them life is worth living. No matter who you are, you can never give in. My life, I've had it tough, but I wouldn't change a day. Because I couldn't be a role model if I never faced the pain. But yeah.
Okay.
I think it
Just before we finish, I have my two granddaughters. Yes, of course. So, you put that there, darling. All right, so
Yeah.
how are you going? Are you, I think you're in the boxing club. And how do you like it?
Yeah.
And you love your granddad?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Big boys.
And I will perform tonight. Is it a song or a poem or?
It's
Okay, okay, go ahead. Thank you very much. Don't make sit down here.
It's really we didn't look up stage presence.
But the same power to the river restore from the arms of my mother to life. You know I had to pride I said if I keep Canela, but the boys never let me go where I'm fair and I'm fighting for the call killer the Lord up above killer. La 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 la. The dream in the white door. I was glad evermore. I came from ocean, high up on the way. The world singing, what a beautiful day. That is about this off. The voice for the rather the big old rare and I'm there. I'm fighting for you back around the corner in the Lord's of killer. La 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 la. The green and the white they tore. From the Paris to last evermore. La 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 the dream and the white they tore. Paris to last evermore. Then nothing for no more.
Thank you very much. It's a good, beautiful granddaughter, and thank you very much. And yeah, thank everyone for coming out. This has been a television production with Michael Oates' studios, which I believe it recently changed the name to Medium.
C Productions, Medium.
C Productions Medium. And also to a partnership in the Caffrey, is it? Museum, to the Museum of Ireland.
Yep.
And also big thanks to Martin Beans Ward, who was the coordinator of the whole event, not just here, of course, overseeing it. And yeah, to everyone, and also a big call out to and a thank you at the same time to the Hawkswell Theatre in the Republic of Ireland in a place called Sligo, which is of course best place on earth. Thank you very much. Until next year.
Lads, looks like this is has some serious competition. Yeah.